Project.
Welcome to the Project, the podcast with the mission to cover every project throughout pop culture and history. I'm Sam.
And I'm Lewis.
And this week we're talking about the 2022 sci-fi film Project Gemini.
Yeah, it kind of went under our radar upon its release, mainly because it came out in January in Russia.
Yeah.
So we didn't get a cinema release here, but we came across it. And
we did. It's popped up a couple of times on searches in the last few months, hasn't it? And we just thought, why don't we just cover it?
It's one of the most unique films we've watched for a while.
It is. There's some strange qualities to it. I think there's some quite good stuff, at least visually, but we'll get a bit more into it in a little bit there.
Yeah.
We've got time codes in the episode description, so if you want to skip to personal projects, we will be talking about a fair few episodes of Andor. I think
finally.
It's like episodes 6 through to 10 or something like that. It's a fair few anyway. It's up to date to where we are at this point.
Yeah, upon release, there's one more.
There will be one more, but I think they do it in little story arcs, and we've just wrapped a little arc up there, so that's quite good. And also Tales of the Jedi as well. We'll be talking about
short 6-piece series.
Yeah. So that's some good fun. But before we get into that, how are you, Lewis?
Yes, I had a moment of panic then when you said no, I had done with that. I was like, shit, I haven't got Project News ready. Yeah, fine. It's thing. I think this is my last,
isn't it? It's very wet.
Yeah, it's just cold and wet everywhere. But this is my last full week of work before Christmas because I had holidays to take up, so I've taken off lots of random days based around the World Cup, and then before we know it, it's Christmas. So
that's it. Almost at the end of the year as well.
Yeah, we'll have to look back on what 2022's been like for us.
Can't wait.
Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right too. Yeah, it's as I said, wet. It's dark. I'm not wet at this point. My trousers were very wet earlier at work. It's quite. Even though I drive to work, I find it very difficult to get into work without getting a little bit rained on at the moment.
It's like a 5-minute walk for me. So
yeah, I mean, the one time last week, I literally had to walk like outside of my house to my car. And it was the most torrential rain, and then I was just like, "Fuck's sake!" to drive to work completely soaking wet. But yeah, no, I'm good though. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah,
good.
I'm excited to delve into this episode. But before that, we've got a little segment that you just spoiled earlier, Lewis.
oh, really? Project News.
Yes, that is the one.
So as always, what I've done is I've grabbed the word project from the name of this podcast, thrown it into Google, clicked on the little news tab, and then seen if there's anything that interests me.
Okay.
It's a quite a fun process that I do on the bus over here every week.
Little warm up there.
Yeah. So this one, it kind of builds on some stuff we've talked about before. I don't know why it keeps coming up, but it's quite funny.
I don't know what this is going to be. But...
Eden Project withdraws complaint over Penrith gardener.
Right.
So the Eden Project has withdrawn its challenge against a small gardening business over its name.
Oh God!
Like the Eden Project seems like a good thing, but it seems like it's run by dicks.
Yeah, it's literally been at least 2 weeks in a row. I think that the founder has seemed to cause some sort of newsworthy.
So they
story.
formally objected to a trademark application by the Gardens of Eden.
Right. That's fucking dumb.
Because of the word Eden.
So you think they're the first?
It gets worse. So the owner, Susan Davis,
poor old Susan.
Her business, the Gardens of Eden, is based 400 miles away from the Eden Project in the Cumbrian district of Eden.
Wow.
So she's literally set up this business in a place called Eden, called it the Gardens of Eden.
Well, don't tell them there's a place called Eden. They'll be objecting to it anytime now.
But like, how on earth can they object to that?
God, he's a bit. Yeah, he seems a bit full of himself, doesn't he? This guy.
But yeah, they have since withdrawn their complaint because obviously
they probably withdrew it when they realised how silly they were being.
Yeah,
you'd hope so. Anyway,
you can't trademark. You can't have control over the word Eden.
No, especially considering. Like they don't even have garden in their name. The Eden Project doesn't have garden in its name. It's a very suitable name for what it is.
Yeah,
it's like this kind of paradise on its own kind of thing.
Gardens of Eden, this business is very much playing on the Bible rather than the Eden Project.
Yes,
and being in Eden, yeah. I thought it's quite funny. Sometimes when
Very
you Google
silly.
Project News, they have a little section where there's multiple news stories about one thing, and this was one of them. There's articles from like BBC, The Guardian, and
Oh
other
right,
stuff
loads.
about this. And I was like,
Slow news week, clearly, or at least a non kind of world news, I guess. This is the local news.
Yeah, Susan Davis said she named her business Gardens of Eden because she gardens and lives in Eden.
Fair enough. Yeah, you can't blame her, can you? Poor Susan.
Yeah.
She probably couldn't afford the lawsuit either, could she?
There's another one here that I was gonna have a bit of back and forth with you on.
Okay.
It's from Gizmodo, which is every cancelled or reworked Disney Star Wars project.
Yeah, there's been a couple recently, hasn't there?
So it's like we could go through them. Brief thoughts on.
Go for it. Yeah,
I don't know how many there are, but
I mean, they're verging on like when DC announced like Mrs. Joker 3, and then they're like, oh wait, we haven't even made Mrs. Joker 1. And then they realise that she's called Harley Quinn as well. It's that kind of fucking
yeah. So
imbecileness.
yeah, there was the original script of Solo by Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Yeah, which supposedly got like almost fully filmed as well, didn't it?
Yeah,
and
then Ron Howard
stepped in. Yeah, they compared Alden Ehrenreich's is it Alden Ehrenreich?
Yeah,
I get confused with him and the guy's Baby Driver,
Ansel Elgort. Yeah, so do I.
Whoever this one is, they compared him to like a Ace Ventura in the original one, which is, I mean, it makes sense for him to be more jokey than Harrison Ford's portrayal, but maybe that's a little bit far. Yeah,
they've got the original Force Awakens script. They've got Episode 9 by Colin Trevorrow.
Yeah,
which was gonna happen until he made that bad film.
Yeah, there was a recent article that I didn't click on that was someone's made like a fan animation, and I think it was related to Weekly Planet or Mr. Sunday Movies. They did like a animatic as well a couple of years ago. It's a couple of biggish channels have put together little versions.
You can read the script online. Apparently, it's quite good and pretty wild.
It seems very different from the bits that I saw. Yeah.
There's the David Benioff and D.B. Weiss film, based on the Game of Thrones hype, and then they lost it based on Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
it's kind of, this project was the whole reason Game of Thrones was shit in the end, because they were kind of done with it.
And they also at one point were signed on for, I can't remember who did the script or the whatever it was based on, but it was some story that was a bit like Man in the High Castle. It was if the South won slavery, but in the modern day.
Bloody hell.
And they were in charge of that, and it's kind of like, I don't think, and it was, it wasn't, I mean, it's never a good time to do that particularly, but I think it came at a particularly bad time in terms of like Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. And people were like, let's not explore this right now. Even though, things like Handmaid's Tale, it's not like glorifying the way that government is treating people, but I think having both a combination of that and these kind of frowned upon showrunners just wasn't something that was profitable.
The next one was Star Wars Detours.
Don't know what that is.
It was an animated Star Wars comedy, but it's set it's non-canon in the original trilogy by the team that did Robot Chicken.
So by Detours, is that a bit like a What If?
Yeah, there was a trailer for it.
Really? Okay.
But then Disney bought Lucasfilm and it was cancelled. They said it was a bit too silly and they were kind of waiting to reboot the entire franchise.
Because there's a trilogy of comics that is like, what if this one thing happened differently in each of the original films?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's one...
Because there's one where Yoda goes with Luke and ends up dropping a moon.
I think he drops the Death Star on like Coruscant or something like that. It's something quite silly.
And there's one where Han and Chewie land on Earth and Chewie becomes Bigfoot.
And Han Solo sees like Indiana Jones's corpse or something like that. It's quite silly. Yeah.
There was another one.
Bigfoot. That's so silly.
There was a Josh Trank Boba Fett movie that was going to be made,
and that was Fan Forstic killed that for him.
Yep, and then they did the series instead. There was also a James Mangold Boba Fett movie.
Yeah.
Which would have been quite cool to see.
Yeah, I think that was probably off the back of Logan that he had that in the works. Yeah.
There was an Obi-Wan film trilogy, which they decided to go TV route instead.
I'm glad they did that. I can't, unless they do, because you can't have him have too many adventures in between, because otherwise it's like, why didn't we hear about this before?
The series, it was fine. There was Gareth Edwards' Rogue One.
Yeah, I think they were going to do like a Rogue 2. That might be what that is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
Well, Gareth Edwards didn't even do the reshoots for Rogue One. It was the guy who show ran
Tony Gilroy.
Tony Gilroy, yeah, who did Andor. So I think
For a second there, I was like, I'm pretty sure Gareth Edwards did do Rogue One.
I think the relationship had fallen apart by the end, so that's probably why he didn't do another one.
Rangers of the New Republic, I remember that being a thing because that was going to be based around Gina Carano's character.
That's
Cara
that
June.
one, yeah, because there was lots of talk in the same way with Defenders and Netflix. I think they were like, oh, all these side characters from Mandalorian are going to join up and do a non-Mandalorian adventure, and they've kind of
and then Gina Carano made herself known.
Yeah, it will definitely build to a team up. I mean, we've already had a lot of team ups in
Kathleen Kennedy said
a
lot of elements of this are going to be just worked into the Mandalorian
stuff. Yeah, makes sense.
There's the Rian Johnson Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah, I think that's
still might happen.
Yeah.
I still like Rian Johnson.
I think it's a great film.
I think The Last Jedi is brilliant, and whether you like it or not, his other work is great. He's clearly talented.
If he does his own thing that doesn't like affect other stuff,
if it's not in the Skywalker saga,
I think it'd be great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But there was Rogue Squadron.
That was the one with Patty Jenkins.
And
she even did like the video where it was like, my dad was a fighter pilot. There's and she's like in the X-wing, and it's like, I'm gonna do. Oh, you know what it was? They were like, I'm gonna do the most realistic fighter pilot film ever, and then Top Gun Maverick came out. Everyone's like, well, we're just slowly. And also, Wonder Woman 84 was absolute dog shit.
Yeah, this may still happen at some point, but they might just go to no ideas. Apparently, there was a Zack Snyder Star Wars movie.
Well, I think he's doing like a Netflix thing, which is basically his own version of Star Wars called like Dark Planet or something like that.
Fair enough. There was Star Wars 1313.
That
was a Boba Fett video game. Yeah,
it looked quite good. I think there was some screenshots and maybe a bit of gameplay. It was kind of supposed to be a bit like an Uncharted kind of, or even like what was it? The one that came out, Knights of the Jedi Fallen Order.
Oh yeah.
I think it was pre that, and I think a lot of that probably got folded into that, and
then the final one is Star Wars Underworld, which was before Disney owned Lucasfilm, was going to be their first live action TV show.
Yeah, it was going to be a lot of. We've seen bits of what it became, I imagine, like the underbelly, the real life.
And I imagine they put a lot of it into like Clone Wars and Rebels,
even Rogue One and Andor now. I suppose. Yeah,
but George Lucas said it was too expensive at the time.
Yeah, it was just after the prequel trilogy, I think, wasn't it? Or maybe even
kind of
at the same time.
Because that was kind of before TV had that big
like
budget
TV.
Like I think it was the Lost Pilot was like the most expensive pilot ever, and it was kind of the first step towards expensive TV.
The thing is, even expensive TV probably like Game of Thrones was like high budget dramas like Breaking Bad or Sopranos or whatever, to get all the sci-fi shenanigans in there adds so much the budget that I can totally get that. There's a couple other things. I guess there's the Taika Waititi project that's supposed to be in the works. I guess that's not been officially cancelled, so that's why. But I don't keep an eye too much. And there's some High Republic stuff which
they've just kind of starting on really.
I think that's more of like an overall thing. That's
because they've released comics and books for that.
It's just fleshing out all that stuff. We actually saw, on the topic of Star Wars, was it The Acolyte? I sent you that casting.
Yeah,
and I can't remember a lot of them, but Manny Jacinto from The Good Place was in there.
Yes, Carrie-Anne
Moss.
Carrie-Anne Moss.
Yeah,
that was her name. I forgot her surname.
The girl who plays X-23. She's in there.
She was in there.
Dark Materials. The Squid Game, the main guy from Squid Game, he's in there. Lewis is looking back at all the photos I've sent him.
And it's mostly project stuff. So it was Amanda Stenberg. I don't know.
She's actually one of the leads in Bodies. I spoke about recently.
Lee Jung Jae from Squid Game. Manny Jacinto, Daphne Keane
Daphne Keane. Yeah.
Logan, is it?
Logan, and she's in Dark Materials.
Jodie Turner-Smith, who I don't know.
Don't recognise the name.
Rebecca Henderson, Charlie Barnett, Dean Charles Chapman, who's Tommen Baratheon.
Right. Okay.
He was also in 1917. He's one of the main two in
yeah,
that.
Yeah,
Carrie Ann Moss.
Yeah, because I think that's not. I don't think it's High Republic, but I think it's pre-Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
I think that.
And that's a pretty.
It may be High
fun
Republic.
cast.
I don't think it's that far back.
It's a good mix of like people like Carrie Ann Moss, upcoming stars, and people I'm not too familiar with, which is an ideal mix for me.
Yeah. It says Star Wars series that takes viewers into a galaxy of shadowy secrets and emerging dark side powers in the final days of the High Republic era. So that is the first live action of the High Republic. Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, I know a lot of the High Republic stuff, the comics and the books have been well reviewed.
Yeah.
I have been meaning to buy the first book and the first comic.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get them for Christmas.
Pop that on a Christmas list.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's exciting. I think it's just started filming then, or maybe it's just announced.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Cool. Well, we're a very Star Wars centric episode then, aren't we?
I didn't even intend that, but
this little detour in the middle for our main topic.
Yes, which is sci-fi.
It is sci-fi. There's a couple of it's not wars. There's a couple of little skirmishes, maybe. I wouldn't even go that far, to be honest. But
no,
it's Project Gemini from earlier this year. You said January, did you?
Yes, it was January.
Yeah.
January.
I don't know anything about the background, about who made it. Did you? Were you able to find anything out?
So yes, I have. It's a Russian film starring lots of Russian people, which aren't really on
like IMDb's and stuff.
Yeah, and like UK Wikipedia, I was going to say.
So,
but
I'll
there's
ask
enough
in a
to
sec,
kind of. So the people we have got, where my note's gone. So it's a lot of Russian names here.
Fair enough. I'm buckled in.
Forgive me. We don't have any Russian listeners. Do they have Spotify?
We actually don't anymore. We used to. We had a one of our first big jumps was in Russia.
Oh, yeah, it's the Blue Book, wasn't it?
Blue Book, yeah.
Yeah.
Hashtag save Blue Book. There's the SEO there.
Yeah. And as much as Russia are being shit to people of the other world, I don't want to blame this cast of people because they probably aren't behind the decision making in there.
No.
So directed by Vyacheslav Linevsky.
Perfect.
Done lots of good Russian, I say good, big budget Russian stuff, I think.
Yeah.
Written by Natalia Lebedeva and Dmitry Zigulov.
Cool.
I'm just going to read off these Russian names now.
Yeah.
I've got who they play, which might help you remember some of the characters because I struggled for a lot.
I've got some names to go through. Yeah.
So the lead is Igor Koreshkov, who plays Steve. He does have a Wikipedia page full of load of Russian films he's done.
I got the sense that he was a bit of a household name, despite being one of the flattest actors that I think I've ever watched in my life.
Yeah,
there's some there's some things that we can talk about after this that kind of that affected the experience of watching it.
Oh, there's one thing massively.
There's one thing, but I don't. Let's just talk about it now. No, you go through. We'll stop you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Aliona Kostadinova plays Amy, Steve's wife.
Yes.
Konstantin Samukov played Ryan, the security guard. Nikita Dyuvbanov plays Frank, one of the guys on there.
Oh yeah. I remember when Frank dies, they were like, Frank.
Yeah. Elizaveta Martinez Cardenas plays Leona.
Yep.
The woman. Who has a fun death. Victor Potapeshkin plays Richard, who's the guy who is kind of their guy in the room.
He's like the religious guy. He's always quoting Bible stuff.
Yeah.
And he's got a Bible next to him most of the time. Yeah.
Dmitry Frid as David, who plays quite a big part in this.
He looks quite a lot like Lance Hendrickson from like Alien and stuff like that.
Yeah, he does.
He's definitely gone for that kind of vibe with him. Yeah.
And Pyotr Romanov as Peter.
Oh wow! So they didn't go too far for the name there, did they? Peter's not in it very much, is he?
No, but it's like they've all got English names,
but also, so the version that we both watched separately was dubbed. But they are speaking English.
Right. I was going to ask, because I made note about this at one point, because it's clearly dubbed. The dubbing is terrible. It's probably the worst thing about this film.
And it takes away from the performances. So there's not a lot visually going on with the performances, but it still hampers that
struggle to
performance.
criticize the actors when they're being dubbed over because it's hard to tell what their performance actually is.
Yeah,
but
I would
also,
agree.
when you look closely and their mouths, they are
are
saying the words
speaking
that is dubbed.
Which I don't understand whether, and it's not crazy to think that they might have filmed 2 versions of this and they don't speak English well enough for them to use their own voices,
Yeah.
or they did ADR afterwards and just didn't care because it seems mad that they would release a Russian film in English.
Yeah.
But also that is clearly what's happened here.
It's really, really crazy. I've got the Google description here. Say Google.
Yeah.
It's the IMDb description because Google said no. A sci-fi thriller about a space mission that's sent to terraform a distant planet. However, the mission encounters something unknown that has its own plan for the planet. Which, that is the plot.
It says that is the plot. It says on Wikipedia that it was released in Russian first and then English. It says in like order, Russian then English.
Yeah.
So
surely they wouldn't have re-filmed the entire thing in English.
They use real spacecraft for this.
What?
They went to Star City in Russia.
Oh, I did see that actually. Yeah.
I'm just seeing production. Movie was shot in Moscow. Post production.
I did read through the Wikipedia
You
page.
did. It doesn't mention it. I just thought
No.
I'd just check.
No.
Beyond the Edge. Did I watch that one? No, I didn't. No.
Do you want to have a guess at the IMDb score for Project Gemini?
See, I was thinking about this beforehand, and so my lessons that I've learned is that TV program episodes are normally slightly higher, so aim for a 7-ish for those.
Yeah.
Films can be wherever. Bad films are normally lower. Do they have IMDb in Russia?
I don't think so.
So this is probably going to be Western audiences / worldwide audiences. I don't think this film was great, so I'm gonna go with like 5.8.
Not a bad guess. 3.4, which is really low. I think lower than I kind of anticipated.
So I've got this open here. Filming took place in Russia and Kazakhstan for 2 months. It will be released in the second half of 2017, it says here.
Huh.
So somebody never updated that part there.
What's that on?
On Wikipedia.
Oh, okay.
So maybe it was filmed a long time ago. Yeah. So what was it?
3.4. One of the lowest we've had.
I mean, I can't say I disagree in lots of ways.
It may be because it's Russian as well, so it may be in Russia it was better received.
Yeah. There was a section here on reception. I've just closed it. So let's see while I'm still talking. No, there wasn't. Sorry, my mistake. Because I guess maybe the Wikipedia's not really. The dubbing was very distracting, and I kind of just tried to overlook it. Yeah, we talked like 2 episodes ago about how watching stuff subs when you're trying to make notes is really difficult.
Yeah,
but I think that I almost would have rather watched a sub version.
The thing is, when we watch like Blue Earth, it's fine because it's animated.
Yeah, of course.
So like it doesn't matter.
No.
Whereas this, you actually see them talk.
I've got to say, I don't think the lead's performance was very good. It was very flat, and it just didn't really. Well, we'll talk about it, and we have got a lot. It's a fucking information dump. The first third of this film, isn't
right.
It?
So
we have to kind of move at pace because we're gonna be here forever.
So they set the scene early on. It's 3 years since there was a global plant virus.
Yeah, and they say if you eat it, you get severe autoimmune disease.
Yeah,
and so you die basically.
Yeah,
so it's kind of like a COVID type deal, isn't
but
it?
worse.
But worse. Yeah.
It says because it's killing plants, oxygen levels are going down.
Yeah, it says they're at 18%, which I know we're not fully oxygen atmosphere, but that feels like quite.
I think we're only like 24%.
Yeah,
but they said if it gets down to like 11%, people will start suffocating.
Yeah.
Because of that, there's an increase in natural disasters as well.
Yeah.
Plants dying. Basically, Project Gemini is here to save the day.
Yeah.
Because they found a 4 billion year old alien device in a cave.
Yeah, it's an archaeological find by this main guy, Stephen Ross. I guess Dr. Stephen Ross.
Yeah.
Who I guess is an archaeologist, or I don't really know. We don't. There's a lot of
He's
scientists.
not an astronaut. We know
he's
that.
not an astronaut. You're not an astronaut, Steve. There's lots of that.
Yeah.
There's a load of scientists having a lecture in a cave, which it does make sense later. This thing's found like stuck in a wall of a cave.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of weird stuff. So they say the devices that they find is an engine and a sphere
A
kind
sphere,
of thing.
yeah.
And they say that it's been there longer than on Earth, longer than life itself.
Yeah.
And then they just go, and we made a duplicate of these so that we can have ones that aren't in the rock, basically.
Yeah.
It's very washed over.
And they've also found a planet which is perfect for terraforming.
Yeah.
They're going to take the sphere there and terraform this planet so that they can start again, essentially.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And there's a bit where they've got like a tablet and they're like, there's like a maze. It's like the Westworld maze. And they're like, if we put certain commands in, something happens. And then like a blue light comes out of it. Very kind of, it would make sense if it was filmed in 2017 based on that blue light coming out into the sky, wouldn't it?
Here they name 3 characters, none of which are Steve, that are going to be central.
Yeah.
It's Peter Larman's in charge of the warp engine.
Yeah.
Leona Redwood in charge of the terraform program.
Oh, you did actually write down what they were from then. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And Ryan Connell's
Oh no,
head
they
of
mentioned
pilots.
David Kurtz as well, but we don't get where he
him.
is. And yeah, Ryan Connell.
Yeah. Who?
He's the military. There's 3 military or 4 military pilots.
Yeah.
They're like the army guys on board, kind of thing.
Yeah, and they found the solar system Tess,
Right.
which several hundred light years away.
Yeah.
But it's got a planet that's perfect to be Earth 2.0.
2.0, yeah. And they also say, I don't know if we just skipped over, they say like, we're pretty sure that life on Earth was created by the sphere. So that's why they're going to use it as a terraforming thing. And then we get like a little bit where it's like Steve and his girlfriend who we haven't met yet. And they're like kissing and making out underneath the sheet.
Yeah.
And there's loads
really
of like
weird.
rainbow LED lights around. And it's like, is this Steve's memories or what? And then the it's like montaging with the rocket taking off.
Yeah, he's going to the rocket. She's running towards the rocket from
I missed that.
somewhere. She's all upset, and then the rocket gets in space. It's all kind of orchestral music, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't really have any impact, does it? And they're talking on the scientists are all on the spaceship, and they're like,
yeah,
who do you think built the orb? Was it some aliens or something? It feels very like Prometheus light.
Very Prometheus.
You know, yeah, very Prometheus.
And you see the sphere crack a bit.
It looks like it kind of crisped up a bit, or like an egg breaking, which I guess is kind of what's going on.
I've written here, there's really bad dubbing, but they seem to meld it in English.
Yeah. And there's this wormhole technology, which I guess is the warp drive.
Yeah, and this looks really cool.
Yeah, so the visuals, we get some stuff with spacesuits and stuff later we can talk about, but generally there's some decent like effects.
So
and stuff
they open up a wormhole in space, and it's a fairly unique looking wormhole, but looks really cool. And their ship's kind of going.
It's
into
almost
it.
a little bit like a Doctor Who kind of thing going off into the distance, like woo, but like in a kind of like you say, like a unique kind of way.
Yeah, it kind of, there's elements of this, and there's a bit more going forward that reminded me a bit of Interstellar.
Yeah, I think they've gone Interstellar plus Prometheus plus
some Alien.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, they don't really commit to any of them, do they? Because we see here like the sphere seems to kind of heal back up. We don't see what happened. And I think we see kind of like little slithering. We kind of see a shot of maybe something that could be wires or tentacles kind of going off into the darkness of the ship. And they're suddenly like a critical error, and they're all like... And
they're all struggling. They've got the G-force.
It's like Moonbase, where they were like, oh!
Yeah.
And the guy's grabbed his Bible. Is it Richards?
Yeah, and he drops it.
He drops it, and they all pass out very dramatically. And... they're all suddenly, they wake up and they're like, where are we?
Somewhere, and they've passed out, and they look at, and the star maps don't line up. They're really confused. They're like, it's not Tess.
Yeah.
We fucked it. Captain Steve then lays into the pilot, being like, you fucked us. You doomed humanity.
He's really horrible to this Peter guy. And
it's like, the mission's failed because of you. And Peter's like, I'm pretty sure I did it right.
Yeah, he's checked everything, and he's like, we did the protocol, and yeah, he's like, you're relieved of duty, get out of here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this Steve guy is a dickhead. We haven't been given any reason to like this guy so far.
No.
And there's a heel turn about 2/3 of the way through where it's like, and now we're supposed to like him. And I don't know.
Yeah, although I think even towards the end, they're still like, he's not a good guy.
Yeah, but I just didn't really ever get on board, even with him as like he has this like unrelenting desire to complete this mission, which is criticized by almost everyone around him. And then he turns out to be right, but not in the way that he thought.
Yeah.
And it's like, it works. It doesn't work out for him because it's a bit of a tragic ending. But do you know what I mean? It's just,
yeah,
I didn't like it.
We get another flashback of him kissing his wife.
There's loads
talking physics to her.
Yeah, there's loads of really short scenes in this film.
Yeah,
and a lot of them fade to black as if it's supposed to be like an ad break or something. Very strange. Yeah, he's talking to his girlfriend about quantum entanglement. And how particles can be connected no matter where they are. And it's like, oh, I wonder if this is going to come up again later. And there's just like loads of LED candles like all over the room.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess that was what the lights were that were flashing when they were making love under the covers or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just...
we get a quick bit of scientists in a cave and the lights flashing. But the people on the ship said they went via the fourth dimension.
Well, there's a bit when the lights are flashing, which is the flashback. There's like that, you can see like the glowing figure appears.
Can you?
Yeah, the one that we see later on. So we see a flash of that Steve's seen something otherworldly on Earth.
Right.
And we get the kind of confirmation of that a bit later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the little teaser.
But yeah, they said they went through the fourth dimension and they don't know where they are now.
They're lost.
And then Peter leaves his room and he heads down to the engine room and he turns off the camera.
Right, I didn't see that bit because for me, I saw like there's a bit. It sounds like someone like jabbering away, but I think it was the computer talking, probably in Russian, and they didn't dub it over or something. Like in the background, it's like, and then suddenly something hits against the window from the outside. Doesn't it?
Yeah,
unidentified object, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, they said they can't get back until they figure out where they are, and then they hear that the airlock's open, and then there's like unidentified object approaching, and it's quite tense.
Yeah.
And then Peter is completely frozen and hits the windshield
against the windshield, and they're like, "Oh."
Although, is it called a windshield if it's in space?
Space shield. Space shield. Someone.
Now, Peter's dead. He's our first casualty.
He's the first casualty, and I've written here, made mistake and now outside dead. I don't really know what that is, but basically, Steve, I'm going to call him Captain Steve because that was the name of the guy in Bigfoot Project, if you remember. He was like, call me Captain Steve. So this guy's Captain Steve as well. He's basically like, doesn't matter, like he made a mistake, he fucked up, and he's just like, he doesn't care basically that Peter died, basically. And everyone else is like, and this David guy just starts talking about his dead daughter out of nowhere, and the voices are just so silly in this, like, it's like, it's classic dubbing. Like even the dubbing that we watched from like 1983 with Project A was better than this.
100% better.
It's bad.
David says he's devoted himself to the mission because he's less useful on Earth than he is here.
Yeah.
And Captain Steve says, don't give up, try and find the location. And then they get data from a probe. They've sent out.
Is this when he's like, the planet's perfect? It's all lucky.
Well, they've kind of twisted because they're like, the planet has volcanic rock. There's no biosphere. Atmosphere has no oxygen. And he's like, but wait a minute. 16 degrees Celsius, outside atmosphere isn't aggressive. All we need is masks. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And it's like, to be fair, if you're going to terraform it, all you need to do is get on it.
The fact you don't need... And it works quite well. We see them in a bit. They don't have to wear full space helmets,
I think that was a good decision.
Which is quite cool because you can
recognize them better.
You kind of recognize... And it visually it adds something quite kind of, unique in a fairly unoriginal film.
But they're like, what if this wasn't an accident? And Ryan is a bit reluctant to go down there. He's like, whoa, like we can't just be
Ryan
going down
is
there.
Basically, like you say, he's the security guy, he's the army guy, he's like in charge of safety. and he's
Yeah.
very like cautious compared to Captain Steve.
I have started calling him Captain Steve here. Captain Steve then his sister.
Oh, did you write it already?
Yeah. So they get into this smaller ship and undock it. It's Steve, David
and Leona.
Leona. Yeah, and they go down to the atmosphere and it's really, really fucking windy.
It's really windy.
I was like, am I watching a film? Am I walking to work?
It's similar to when they do like the glass storm in Prometheus, but just not quite as cool.
Yeah.
There's like the glass sandstorm thing.
Then they start falling. They have to use the fuel to slow themselves down.
Yes, so they somehow like run out of fuel almost straight away, seemingly.
I think it's because they're trying to manage.
Yeah, it seems
the
like
thing.
maybe they should have put more fuel in, really.
But then you can't just put more fuel in a spaceship. There's a very delicate formulas into how much fuel you put in.
I mean, you know.
But then they crash land, but kind of on the belly, and
they're right on. Well, we find out in a moment they're on the edge of the cliff, but we get a classic post-crash flashback to
a woman
in the park.
Yeah, who's been made a bracelet from the old sphere.
Yes.
And then the sprinklers come on and they kiss.
Yeah, Captain Steve, this is the flashback. He's like, "Oh, we have to go. The sprinkler's about to come on." She's like, "No, it's nice." And then the sprinklers come on. It's like, okay, it's supposed to be romantic. It just looks stupid, really, to be honest.
But yeah, there's no critical damage to the lander, but they are almost out of fuel.
And they landed in the wrong place. And then Captain Steve's like, "Well, there's caves here still. Let's just go to one of the caves."
Yeah, he was like, "We can just put the sphere in a big cave. Like, that's fine.
It's fine, yeah.
I don't know what it was going to be.
I think it was going to be in another cave. And he's like, "We're in the hills. There's got to be a cave here."
Right, okay.
And we get a bit of like some goo under... Oh, they put the sphere on like a roller
trolley
thing.
Yeah.
And as it leaves, we see that there's like some goo under the floor.
Yeah. So they're on the planet and it's all kind of rocky and like a mountain, and then they get to the cave. And Steve's like, human race's new history starts here.
Well, the thing is, they're all super calm about just being on an alien planet as well.
Yeah.
Like, no one has any reaction to it.
I have to say, at this point, I was like, do you know what? I'm on board with this.
Yeah,
I'm on board with it. I was like, I'm intrigued as to where this is going.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some kind of fun stuff. Speaking about the designs and stuff quickly, they've got kind of these orange and grey suits which look quite cool. They've got these kind of like big, they almost look like jetpacks on their back that I think are just indicators of like fuel or
their
oxygen.
masks are very similar to the Talican masks in Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
They've got these little masks down there. And I love how they had like these fisherman beanies because it's windy.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, but it adds this kind of interesting visual element. They look quite cool.
I know not all of this film is original, but the spacesuits design was quite unique. And
yeah, that orange and grey. It reminded me, did you ever play Death Stranding?
No.
Kind of similar vibes to that, which was the one with is it Norman Reedus from Walking Dead? And it was kind of...
All I know is that Churches did a couple of songs.
Yes, they did a couple of songs. Yeah, that's a lot of walking around on a kind of in a desolate Icelandic kind of landscape, wearing a high-tech suit. So this gave me definite vibes of that. But yeah, they're in the cave and they're talking, and it cuts the guy in the ship.
Who's David? Is it David? No.
This is one of the others, like Frank or something.
Oh,
like that.
no, this is
Ryan, it may be.
I think it might be Ryan.
Yeah.
No,
it's Richard. I've written.
Okay.
No, Richard's the other guy. Who knows? Carry on.
He like grabs a torch and he seems a bit. He's on the main spaceship. He seems a bit.
So it is Richard, yeah.
No, he's not in the main spaceship.
No, he is because
he is.
Yeah.
And he finds a load of goo on the wall, and then he finds something on the floor.
Yeah,
which is not clear what it is at the start. But
it turns out it's the camera, like a GoPro, isn't it?
Yeah. Back on the planet, the sphere in the cave opens.
Yeah.
The design of the inside of the sphere I thought was quite cool.
It's very kind of H.R. Geiger alien kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like black pipey kind of thing. I don't really know. So did they make the white sphere bit and then the middle bit was the thing? They replicated that from what they found?
No, I think the sphere, the whole thing they replicated.
Okay.
and then it shoots the classic blue light up into the sky.
So is it coming out of the cave? Is it
Yeah,
going through
there was
a
a
hole?
hole in the top
They
of the
made a hole.
cave.
Okay, yeah.
I think the hole's already there, and they just kind of positioned it underneath.
Because they said it needs to be kind of protected from the elements a bit. So yeah. Okay.
But
yeah, the woman Leona's like, she's
Peter
like,
would be so happy.
And it's like fucking hell. And I kind of thought the Peter thing, that we get a bit of a reveal in a moment, but it's a bit of a strange. It's dealt with very strangely, Peter's death. It's like,
yeah.
I thought maybe he was going to somehow come back, or I don't really know, but it seems a bit strange. It's just like, oh, it's sad that Peter died, isn't it? And like, she seems to be the only one that cares.
I think David was upset as well, but
Captain Steve does not give a fuck.
David, a former guest on the pod, he was quite upset that Peter died.
Yeah, when we watched it all together.
Yeah. But anyway, they've set up the sphere, so they're heading back to base, which is their lander they've landed.
Yeah.
David has no data. And then we hear
David has no data.
On how the sphere's going, I think.
Oh yeah, they can't like connect to the sphere or something. Yeah.
And then Ryan comes in and says, martial law is in effect on here.
That's it.
And they're like, Steve's like, what the fuck?
Do you think martial law would be a good name for a character?
Martial law.
It'd be quite a cool name. I'm sure that's been done before.
Yeah, probably.
Like either like an old-timey like sheriff or like a space cop.
Yeah.
Be quite cool.
Law.
Like a Judge Dredd kind of character. You could do it a bit parody where he's a bit too forceful, like Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But anyway, they've discovered this video of Peter. What the little thing they found was
his GoPro.
A camera. Yeah. And it's him. He's gonna check the engine. He's like, I know I did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want to be scapegoated here.
That's
so
right.
I'm gonna go fix
I'm
whatever's
gonna film
wrong.
this so that I've got a copy, but I'm also gonna turn off the cameras so they don't think I'm messing with it.
Yeah.
It seems a little bit sus. Though,
I think.
still.
Yeah, I think he didn't want people to look at the camera and be like, holy fuck, Peter's in the engine room, go stop it.
Yeah,
he wanted to fix it and then be like, hey guys, look, I am so smart.
Little prick.
But anyway, he hears a noise in the engine.
Yeah, he opens the door.
And it's quite animalistic.
Yeah, it's there's quite a lot of it reminds me a little bit of the Predator noise, like the clicking kind of.
Yeah.
Almost a bit like bug-like. Not that bugs make noise particularly, but that kind of.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, animalistic, insectoid kind of noise.
And then you see like a tentacle move.
Yeah, there's like a writhing kind of mass in there, and it's in the darkness. It's got that H.R. Geiger xenomorph kind of look to it.
Yeah, I quite like again that you can't really see it.
Yeah, see.
Like how Alien did it.
Yeah, I think that's where they were going with this, because we don't get really any reveals until later on. And even then, they're a little bit indirect. And I can see what they were doing, but I don't think it works in the same way. That's my 2 cents there.
But anyway,
this part is quite cool.
Peter gets grabbed.
He gets grabbed, and the and then he kind of gets shook around a bit, and I think we see the camera kind of fly off him. Yeah, which is very lucky for everyone there.
So then Ryan's like, "There's some kind of life form. It turned up."
They say that I think they figure out that it climbed out of the sphere just pre-engine going,
just when they left Earth, and they said it was like a Trojan horse.
Yes.
And they refer to it as the Trojan for the rest of the film.
Which is cool. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I thought it was quite a cool name. And then like, this caused the failure.
Yes. So it wasn't Peter. We can all forgive him now. R.I.P.
Yeah. But they like, it went back into the sphere.
Yeah.
So it's down there with you guys.
Yeah.
But we can track it.
Because it interferes electromagnetically.
Yes.
It's like an EMP, which they don't explain.
Which is nice. Yeah.
Maybe they cut that scene out. Yeah.
But anyway, they get the first data from the cave. What's this going on? And the sphere is working on a different program than what they set.
Yeah, it's doing its own thing, and they're like, "Uh-oh, something's happened."
And Captain Steve was like, "Well, we've got to go back out there and change the settings."
He's so I almost get what they were trying to do. It's like this scientist who's so like
obsessed.
one track mind, so obsessed. there was just like some ingredient missing from the character that like I
think it was emotion.
Yes,
because he's not too different to Matthew McConaughey's character in Interstellar.
Yeah, I mean, they can do it as a character who doesn't really outwardly show emotion. It's something between like the performance and this dubbing that it's lost. Because I do like what I said earlier, this idea of this guy who's like one track mind and he doesn't give a fuck about anyone. He wants to do this thing, and it turns out he was right, but not for the reason he thinks.
Yeah.
I think that is a good thing. That's a good little storyline. That's a fun thing for a character. They just don't do it properly in this, and it might be the dubbing at the end of the day. It may be.
It's really hard to tell what
really is.
what problems were caused by the dubbing, and would this have been good in Russian if we knew Russian?
But at the same time, I feel like you can tell when someone is good at like face acting. And we watched, we'll talk about it a bit later, but there's a character in Andor who's played by an actor that, you know, is quite familiar to a lot of us. And there's some incredible face acting from this guy.
Yeah.
And, you know, fair enough, he's done a lot with his face over the last 10 years, last 20 years. And we'll talk about it in a little bit in case people haven't caught up with Andor. But, you know, there's a stark contrast between, like, these guys are not good at visually acting. They might be able to deliver in Russian, and that might be it.
See, that's the thing. It may be a cultural thing that we don't quite get as well.
Maybe, yeah. There's something there. There's something not there, to be honest.
But anyway, Ryan's like, no, I'm in charge now.
He takes command, doesn't he?
He says there's more to the sphere than we know.
Yeah, and he's like, Steve, I bet you know something that you're not telling us.
And he's like, no, I've told you everything. And he's like, well, I've got a fucking video from the cave.
I've got a video. And this is what we talked about earlier. We get a recorded video from the cave on Earth where Steve was doing some work, and a kind of glowing Dr. Manhattan kind of figure, like almost like it's like a bit of a hologram, but it's also like a bit like a skeletal kind of, like something's kind of almost half phasing into the world kind of thing. We don't really ever get an explanation for it, do we? We can kind of make assumptions based on stuff later, but yeah, it turned up and he saw it, and I guess this is part of what's driving him forward in the mission.
And Brian's like, the sphere's an incubator, so like we should just leave this place.
Yeah.
And Captain Steve's like, there's no sense in discussing the anomaly. That's why I didn't bring it up.
You're like, it's not important, this glowing alien.
Yeah. But Ryan's like, look, if you'd told us, then Peter would still be alive, which I don't quite believe.
I mean, if Peter hadn't felt the need to go down and investigate himself, and if Steve had been like, before I blame you, the guy who definitely hasn't done anything wrong, let me just tell you about this alien that appeared and may well have involved himself.
Yeah.
I think that's where they're getting at.
We get another flashback on Earth. This time it's David and Steve in the cave.
Yeah.
I think, and David's daughter recently died.
I think he's just come back from maybe a funeral or something, because Steve's like, sorry, I couldn't be there. And David's just like, oh, it's all right. I know how busy you are. And he's just like,
yeah.
David's a bit of a wet blanket, isn't he?
He is. And at this point, he's like, I want to join the mission. And Steve's like, I'm not sure you should. Like,
I think he's like, I've been signed off psychologically. It's fine. And it's like, yeah, I think you know, maybe you should stay.
I think David kind of goes like, if I don't go on this mission, there's literally nothing for me to live for.
His daughter's called Rhea as well, which is really funny, because we've had a Rhea in a Russian Rhea before. So
whose father was also on a space mission. But yeah, and then eventually Steve kind of gives in and agrees with David to come.
Yeah. And maybe that was a bad idea, because they kind of butt heads a little bit later.
Yeah, so it's now them in present day, and they kind of discussing the sphere.
Yeah. Steve's basically like, we need to go get it no matter what. Like, go down.
Yeah, he's like, Ryan's too careful. Like, fuck him. He's like, the Trojan is far enough away from the cave that we can make it down there.
Yes.
And Steve says, if we don't, Earth will be like your daughter. Dying, dead.
I think they were going for this, like, you know,
Like, you couldn't save your daughter, but you can
no, I
save
just think
Earth.
with Steve, I think they were going for this like emotionless, like
Dick.
kind of twat who like
Yeah.
is a bit manipulative, but in like a kind of blunt way of like, you know, like he can't read emotions properly and he just blurts things out.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just comes across as a bit of a twat, to be honest, doesn't he? Which I guess is the point there. But they get down there, instead of the lovely blue light of 2017, we've got this red light coming out instead.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's creating an alien life force.
And the settings were changed. They notice on their like tablets that the Trojan's getting closer. And so David's like, we need to get out of here.
I think he wants to destroy the sphere, doesn't he? Because he tries to shoot it.
Well, first he needs to get out of here. And then Steve like pushed him away and said, no, we can do it. And then David's like, no, this ain't working. And shoots the sphere.
Yeah, and we find out later that a little chip of it came off.
Yeah.
But I don't. Also, why have the scientists all just have like these like guns? I don't know why they've got guns.
Well, they'd probably have guns. The Scurry had guns, and they were like, "Well,
because
of the
Trojan." Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
But anyway, suddenly the Trojan is there, so they go running into the caves.
Yeah, and we see a shot where David's like round the corner. And
I thought this bit was quite cool,
and it's like kind of clicking and moving around, and we see more of the shadows than anything.
And it's very like what's it when you're scared of small spaces?
Claustrophobic.
It's very claustrophobic.
Yeah, David's almost jammed up in a bit, and we can hear like it's almost like a mass kind of moving past him. And it's quite cool. It's one of the cooler bits of the film, which is.
And we kind of get off. We almost get a look at the alien. We see its shadow or something.
Yeah, we see a shadow. We maybe see like some writhing bits moving past, but it's very unclear. And they managed. I think Captain Steve's gone a different route through the cave, but they both end up just running across this field, like plain bit.
Yeah,
and that's quite cool. They're legging it. It's like something from Interstellar, and
they can tell that. They're being chased. And they just about get back to the ship in time.
Yes, but they've effectively like taken it back with them, kind of thing. Yeah, it's outside.
And David calls Steve a psycho.
Yeah, he's like fully obsessed with the mission because he's just like Ryan comes up and is like, "What the fuck have you guys done?"
At first, Steve says to David, like, "I will shoot you if you threaten the mission again."
Yeah,
even though they are friends.
He's completely obsessed. Yeah, Ryan turns up and he's like, "What have you guys done?" And then there's like bashing outside from the creature.
Steve's like, "We did what we had to do."
And he's like, "Hey, Ryan, what are you gonna do? Like, beat me up?" And then Ryan punches him in the face.
Yeah. But then they hear the module integrity is compromised.
Yeah, so basically it's been breached in some way. And there's warning lights going off, and Leona, I guess, was asleep and she wakes up.
Yeah, she gets woken up by the alarm and she's walking down the hallway in just like her underwear and vest.
Yeah, and she treads in some goo and it's all very tense, and then she gets grabbed.
And it's like,
I think it's
Frank?
I was going to say Brian. There's not a Brian.
I don't think it's Ryan.
So there's 3 non-scientists. One is Richard, who's on the ship.
I think the other one's Frank.
There's Frank and there's
Ryan.
So it's Frank, yeah.
Frank. Okay, cool.
Frank has no character development, but just seems like a nice guy, basically.
Yeah. He's grabbed her and he's cut his hand over her mouth. And he's like, the Trojan is in the lander.
Yeah.
So they go into the lab.
Yes, and this is quite a cool kind of tense scene. There's like almost lots of kind of air conditioning fans with like plants behind them.
Yeah,
and I guess they were trying to grow different.
So this kind of reminded me of, in a weird way.
What's that?
Nemesis. Like I know it wasn't quite a lab, but the whole lab and there's a creature there.
Yeah,
kind of vibes.
And to be fair, the kind of black xenomorphy design kind of lends itself a little bit. Yeah.
But then they hear a noise,
and they say it's hard to breathe in there. So I don't know if oxygen had been affected. Oh, it turns off the fans. I think
turns off the fans. Yeah. They hear a noise, and then they
Frank like
see
pushes
like moving in the plants.
Yeah, and Frank pushes Leona out and like locks the door.
Yeah,
and then we just hear loads of screaming from him. So he kind of
sacrificed himself so Leona could get away.
And she's like, she runs off and meets the rest of them. So it's Captain Steve and David both still in their suits from the outside. and Ryan's with them.
Yeah, they're in kind of like the control room or something.
In the main bit, and they check the stats and the cameras and like other monitoring stuff's all been taken out.
Yeah.
They're like, the Trojan's smart, and we have to go.
Ryan blames Steve for all of this because like
It's
you
completely
led
fair,
you
yeah.
led the Trojan here.
And he's like, they basically make a plan to go to the fuse box and it's a very classic kind of sci-fi.
They find out the Trojan came in through the cooling system.
Oh yeah,
so it's clearly smart because it knew where the weak
found
bit
the
was.
weakest bit, yeah.
So they're gonna smoke it out and weld the hole shut. Is the plan.
So they're gonna they're gonna reset the fuse, and then
and then Ryan's like, it's too risky. And Steve's like, fine, I'll go myself.
See, that's the thing. We get that's the first redeeming thing from Steve. It's like he
knows
it's his fault. It's like
he
he'll
has that recognition and
yeah. So I guess this is where we're supposed to be turning around on him, and there's a fairly tense little bit where he's moving towards it and he's locked himself onto this kind of cable, and he does it just in time and gets pulled back. It's one of those things where I wish we'd seen like a little bit more of the creature in this point, because a lot of this feels like they're acting against nothing, because there's no.
I like the show but don't tell.
But it's like one step.
No, not that.
Tell but don't show.
Keeping the monster.
But I think this is one step too far away from
at least see a silhouette.
Yeah. Or like a tentacle come out. Yeah. Because in this, we hear noise and then he gets pulled back in time and it's like, fine. And even the bit with Frank, like, maybe see some blood against the window or something. Like,
I think we do actually.
Pardon me.
See some blood on the window.
Well, maybe more blood, more window, more goo.
More obvious. But yeah, the cameras are back online from when Steve went out.
Yeah.
And he makes...
they can check back against like where something is.
He makes a plan that's an analogy to like a bull and a matador.
Yeah, like running of the bulls and leading it to the arena to get killed by the matador.
Yeah.
And Steve is like really good at this plan, considering he's like not an army guy, and Ryan is there who is an army guy.
And he's not an archaeologist.
This is like, I guess, him being like the lead character.
Yeah.
But it's a decent plan. They've all got little bits, and it's like each of them will open the door and run a little section and then lock the door. Even though I think we found out that it can break through doors, so it's a very like keep it moving kind of plan.
Yeah. But Steve's gonna get the Trojan to chase him.
Yeah, it's gonna get him chased outside, isn't it?
Yeah, so he gets to the airlock and he starts hitting his gun against the wall.
Yeah.
And the lights go out because it's like an EMP, it turns lights off wherever it goes.
That's it. And they didn't account for that in part of the plan, did they?
Yeah. And it kind of comes around the corner. We see a flash of it briefly, maybe like a frame.
Yeah.
But Leona's going to manually open an airlock and hide.
Yes.
This bit is a bit confusing.
Well, they say that their plan is to get it outside.
No, I mean is the way it's shot, because they're describing the plan whilst doing the plan and other stuff all kind of happening at the same time.
Because it's a bit like the heist kind of sequence, but it's not done properly, is it? Yeah, no, I get that. But they say when they get it outside, they're going to basically lure it in front of the engine, turn on the engine and roast it, don't they?
Yeah. Steve gets outside, but he can't turn on the engine.
Yeah, because of the EMP.
The Trojan's there, so Leona runs outside.
I think Steve runs off getting chased by it.
Leona runs outside and starts shooting, but she's positioned herself in the worst place.
And because it's now moved away from the engine suddenly kicks in and she gets roasted.
She gets absolutely eviscerated.
Yes. And she was a bad, boring character, so I do not care.
Steve gets back to the ship at this point,
and David's there.
I accidentally knocked the charger up my laptop. My laptop shit and doesn't work well, and I was like, "Oh fuck!"
Well,
laptop turned off.
David must have opened the door for him, because David's there. Steve jumps in. And as they're shutting the door, a tentacle whips in and gets David on the arm.
Just at this point, we've kind of got our first look at the Trojan, not properly, but it looks a bit xenomorph, but like wiry, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's the way that I kind of picture it. It's almost, because I say the way I picture it, because we don't really get a great look at it throughout. We get a shot later where it's face to face with another character, but it's not a shot where you can kind of get a full picture of it, I would say.
Yeah.
I kind of think, the Sentinels in the Matrix,
Yeah.
kind of squiddy, like a mixture between that and like a xenomorph kind of thing.
I think that's
so we don't really see if it has a body of sorts. It's kind of,
we don't really see like the shoulders up.
yeah, it's almost like there's something I was trying to think of, like a kind of, not like a manta ray, but like some sort of aquatic creature that has like a kind of rounded, like almost like a like a kind of whale-ish kind of head, but then there's something that I'm thinking of that's like some creature from something. It's almost like a manta ray, but like with a rounded face at the front. But then instead of the ray parts, it's all kind of tentacles going down. Like it's got kind of shoulders. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to describe. But
yeah,
like if you imagine Batman standing there with his cloak down, where he's kind of this solid mass, and then instead of a bat head, he's got kind of a rounded, kind of slightly alien-y kind of head, and then instead of a cloak, it's just like a massive tentacles to the bottom.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I remember it looking like. But we get a better look a bit later on.
But yeah, the tentacle got in and hit David. Yeah. And Brian, meanwhile, shuts the other airlock.
Yeah, so they've kept it outside, and I think that we see a shot in a moment where they're welding up the bit that came in originally.
Yeah.
And they say like, oh, it went back to the cave, and it's like, cool. And we see a shot of Frank, who was in the lab, and he's got all his guts are all out of the place. So he got like,
at first I thought he was covered in tentacles.
No, he got
pretty sure it's his intestines.
He got gutted. He did.
Yeah. But we get another flashback here. I was kind of just really getting into it. I was like, yeah, like the monster's out. We've got this whole
pre-flashback. You mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like this whole, the aliens running loose. People are dying. That like the stakes are high.
Yeah.
And then we get a flashback, and I was like, oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. And this is one of the more emotional flashbacks. It's in well, it's in a greenhouse, but is this greenhouse in the cave?
Yes.
It is, because we find out where the bracelet goes in this, or is it in this bit? That might be the next bit. Basically,
Amy, Captain
Steve's girlfriend. She's like, the virus is here. It's in our home, which I guess she means in their area.
I think because the plants are dying.
I
think they live there.
Yeah, and then she's like, Steve, I am pregnant.
And she's like, you're not even an astronaut.
And he's like, basically, she's like, you can't go on your mission, because this is like, let's say 6 months, 3 months before, whatever. And he's like, I'm really happy, but it's such poor timing. I won't get to see him grow up. Yeah. There's literally no question in his mind about whether he's going.
And she's like
vaccineologist.
Oh yeah, what are they called? We should know by now. She working on a vaccine for this, and she's making progress. But he's like, I need to save the Earth.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Virologist.
A virologist.
Or a vaccinologist, this one as well.
Vaccinologist. Yes, that's the end of that flashback.
That's the end of that chapter.
But yeah, they're then in the lab, Steve and David. David's like not having a great time. He's on like a medical bed.
Yeah, he's not
And
very
Steve's
well.
like looking at the tentacle that got in there.
Yeah, it's the first time they get a chance to look at the creature, and he says that it might be a biorobot.
Yeah, which I had to rewind to check that he did say biorobot.
Yes.
I had the subtitles on.
Oh, did you as well? Yeah.
But
he says it's the same material as the sphere, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Even though the outside of the sphere is this kind of white, kind of apple looking thing, and the inside is this HR Geiger looking thing. It's a bit of a contrast between the two, but yeah.
But he like drops some water on it, and it like reacts a bit, and it changes when it's in contact with water.
Yeah, it kind of glows blue, and they're like, oh, we didn't think about this for some reason. And David says something very stupid where he says, maybe they are much more advanced than we are. And I said, Dadoy.
Adoy. That's kind of a bit of a catchphrase recently, isn't it?
obviously. Are you
Yeah.
fucking serious? Like, this thing made life on Earth. It's like,
Yeah.
and maybe they're not quite as advanced as we are with our Teslas and our Twitter.
And we are struggling to terraform a planet.
Yeah.
But Steve says that David's blood may hold the key to a vaccine for Earth's virus.
That's it. Yeah.
But he cuts open the tentacle and he opens it up and it looks like electrical in there.
Like
it's
a kind of fiber optic kind of thing
it's like what I thought. It's like red with like flashing yellow bits going past.
Yeah. And is this when like the screen starts doing weird red matrix stuff?
There's like I think it comes up with a warning. And
the kind of anomaly thing we saw before kind of happens in the air, like the air's kind of like electrified kind of thing.
Yeah, and
it's
kind of a flashback and a more kind of in the moment thing. Oh, he's back in the cave where he saw the light person, and then he's like, "It's a transponder."
Yes, which doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the transponder's like a communication-y thing.
It made me think of Friends, where Rachel guessed that Chandler's a transponster.
It's a transponster, David.
But
Ryan comes up and locks the door, doesn't he?
At first they're like they can see the connection to the sphere. That's their way of colonizing,
right?
Via the sphere. So they're like, the sphere is the key.
And then Ryan locks the door, and Steve's like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "You are under arrest, Steve." And Steve's like, Ryan.
Yeah. But yeah, Ryan's like, people are expendable to you. And David's like, yeah, you just want to play the hero. Like, on his bed, just like...
He's like, you don't care about anyone else. You're a dick. Basically.
And then we get another flashback.
Yes. I think they were going for the Interstellar thing then, weren't they? I've just kind of realised that, which is fine, but the story that's unfolding in the past isn't interesting at all.
Yeah. So basically...
oh my God, it is Interstellar. I just realised.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
When did Interstellar come out? Like 2015?
I think it was early in that one.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, Amy's proposal looks promising, but he's like, I still need to go. And he he kind of talks to the baby at this point and says, Daddy is like a god creating a new earth.
God, yeah.
Fuck me, Steve. Get your ego in check.
He is. And Amy says a great little line, which I think I'll try and find for the end of this episode.
Yeah.
All you care about is you and your project.
Yeah. His personal project, if you will.
If you will, yes. And then she throws this lovely bracelet that he's made on the floor in the greenhouse and walks away. Very symbolic.
Steve is then talking to Richard, who's up in the spaceship.
Yes.
And they kind of talking about, the sphere and stuff. And
saying, where does he get this idea from? Because he starts thinking, oh, look at the stars and all that. But what is it that kind of drives him towards this thinking? I
think because he thinks about what's happened so far and they traveled through the fourth dimension.
Yeah.
So he says, look at the stars and look at their expansion over 4 billion years.
Yeah.
Which Richard looks at and they come to the realization they didn't move through space, they moved through time.
Yes. And then
and I wrote down here, now that's a plot twist.
Yes. I mean, in this conversation, I saw it coming for whatever reason. I can't remember. There was something that made me think like this is, I mean, it was pretty obvious where it was kind of going in this kind of interaction. And then Richard says some sort of Bible verse about like the earth before light or something. It's some sort of Genesis situation.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're on Earth the whole time.
Very Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
It was Earth all along. But yeah, they said like the sun there is their sun.
Yeah.
This is the Earth before. This is the Earth 4 billion years ago. And then we get a shot of David.
He looks fucked.
He looks like he's melting.
Yeah,
he
like
looks
half his body is. We only see that half at this point, but we see later it is like a half and half.
Yeah,
situation.
And without being insensitive, he kind of looks like a burn victim.
Yeah, but slightly more kind of like diseased and like bulbous.
It's a bit like pussy.
Yeah. like a wet husk.
A wet husk.
A wet husk.
Um,
And also somehow
he
he looks at this photo. This is so funny. He
Oh,
looks at
yeah.
this photo of Amy that he's taken, and it's this photo. It's like in like things like John Wick, where like the hero looks back at their dead wife, and they happen to have this video of them like frolicking on a beach or under a load of sheets, going, "Ha
Yeah.
ha! I love you so much, protagonist. I hope nothing ever happens to our relationship." But the picture is like the thing you see where couples go on holiday. And like one of them's like looking back at the camera with their hand towards like a first person. And you can see the bracelet that he made is in the foreground. And he has this realization that the piece that chipped off when David shot the sphere is the exact same piece that he used to make the bracelet.
Yes, which is convenient, but I kind of like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's we've seen, and it kind of moves into that more. Things going back in time and then surviving to current days. So
I guess that bit was just on the floor. But no, it goes back into the machine.
Yeah,
so
maybe
it was just a bit
fell
that
out when they
pops
opened.
off. Yeah,
but like they do it in Futurama at one point where Bender's in the past.
Well, there's a part that comes up later where this is very similar. Do you remember the cavern on the green where Leela shoots all the holes and makes the stalactites?
Yeah.
This whole thing is very, very much that.
I think Futurama also took that from Star Trek, because in the Next Generation,
okay, right. So it might be
Data's head is like 3,000 years older than his body, because they go back in time at one point. His head blows off. So
that's
the
Bender thing they do then.
Yeah,
it? Yeah. Okay.
And then they're like, oh wait a minute, it might still be there, and they go find him because he's an android. His head's there, and they reattach it to his modern body.
So that's the Bender.
That's
thing
the Bender thing. Yeah. But anyway,
so Steve's like, I need to write a message on the inside of the bracelet.
Yeah, they're like, we can't save Earth, but we can tell Amy how she can save the Earth with her vaccine.
Yeah. So he does like an inscription of like some sort of code that she'll know. And it's like, how the fuck did they not see it? But it turns out it's only when water goes on it that it glows.
Yeah.
So
which
there is
adds in the water.
Yeah,
I quite like that.
At first I was like, that's stupid, but it does kind of work. And they're like, we need to reprogram the sphere so that we'll exist. It's like a kind of complete the paradox kind of situation.
We get a quick bit of Amy wandering around the cave. I thought she was going to realise then, but nope.
They long it out a little bit more. At this point, right, there's probably about 10 minutes left of the film, and a lot, maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I kept looking at the time. I wasn't watching the clock. I was. And I was just like, I kept thinking, have I got a perfectly legal copy of this film that's going to have the ending cut off and I'm going to have to source it elsewhere? No, I don't think there's any credits in this film. It just it's
a fast ending.
Yeah.
But Ryan got some explosives together.
Yeah. So this is the thing. So this is what I was saying before. Like Ryan, he's never posited as the bad guy, but I always saw him as more reasonable than Steve throughout the whole.
But he's the antagonist.
He's now the antagonist because he wants to blow up the sphere.
Yeah.
But now we kind of know that if he does that, he'll destroy humanity.
Yeah. And Richard opens up the lab door for Steve, and I was like, oh, so he agreed that he should be under house arrest until this whole conversation.
I mean, he's part of the whole thing. And then Steve's trying to explain it to Ryan.
Oh, this bit was this is a classic fucking trope that pisses me off. He's like, I'm going to go tell Ryan and explain to him, we're on Earth 4 billion years ago, the sphere, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And he runs into Ryan, and he's like, what are you doing? And Ryan's like, I'm going to blow up the sphere. And they kind of have a back and forth. And I'm just like, just fucking tell him.
He's like, no, the sphere is important. And Ryan's like, I don't want to hear it. And it's like, but I need to tell you. And it's like, oh, no, you are mad from science.
Yeah, and the monster having
and the listeners, the dialogue is not far off what I'm saying there, including delivery.
And then as I have that argument, David appears and shoots Ryan.
Yeah, so this is when we see. So David is fully kind of bumpy. I've written down one
Yeah,
side.
I thought it was going to be like he's been infected and is becoming the Trojan.
I mean, it's a little bit of that because he seems to have been influenced in some.
Yeah.
But then we've also seen that he wasn't probably the most psychologically stable person going into it.
Yeah, and he's
And
shooting at
he-
Steve, and he's like,
yeah.
the Trojan didn't kill me. Like, it doesn't do anything for no reason. So he thinks he's got a higher purpose almost.
Yeah, and he's like, I need to help my daughter by stopping
Yeah, he goes.
humanity.
He's basically says like, my daughter died a long and painful death as a child.
Yeah.
If we stop humanity being created, then she won't exist to suffer.
Very, very insular,
It is-
one-dimensional view of the world.
It's very like I've gone crazy logic.
Yeah, it is that, and it comes not out of nowhere, but it's a bit of a whiplash there.
Yeah, and
All the scientists are all really good with guns. Like they're all just, I guess they were
must have got
trained,
training.
but
Yeah,
it's all. And there's like a bit of a showdown where
it reminds me of. I remember an interview with Bruce Willis where a few years after Armageddon,
oh yeah,
he said he said to Michael Bay, why would they send drillers up to their one astronaut?
yeah.
And Michael Bay said, that's less fun.
Yeah,
and
so
that's
just train the
logic.
astronauts with drilling. No.
No, but Steve like throws a Rubik's cube. He's got a weird
Yeah.
Rubik's cube ball thing.
Yeah, it's like a
And it distracts
multi-sided.
David and he shoots David.
He shoots him. He's not dead, but he kind of backs off.
Yeah.
And then Steve starts the timer on the bombs, which is like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense because we've got about 10 minutes left of the film.
And he's gonna blow up the lander instead.
Yeah, and he wants to lure the Trojan into the lander and then blow it up. So he runs
and then
the door.
go to the sphere, basically.
He runs the door. It's super windy outside. He shoots a flare up in the air. And this is all quite like visually quite cool. They got the red
flare
light.
through like the flare through the clouds looks quite cool.
Yeah. And Steve kind of runs back in and
The
he's
Trojan
trapped between.
Gets to the door.
Yeah, and he ends up getting trapped between the Trojan and David. So he's locked one door with the Trojan bashing on it, and David's at the other end of this long corridor.
Yeah, and they're having a
shooting.
shootout, but that door's like coming in.
It's quite an interesting little thing.
It's literally like stuck between a rock and a hard place type thing.
And then we get a bit where the Trojan smashes down the door and David sees it from the end of the corridor and is like shit and runs off.
Yeah.
And this is when we get the face-to-face with Steve.
Yeah,
and the
very
Trojan.
alien again.
Very
but
alien.
they kind of, and the Trojan's big.
It's big. It's massive. It's probably like 8-10 foot kind of tall, but like hunched down.
Hunched
kind of thing.
over, yeah.
It is this kind of. I'm really struggling to think what I'm thinking of, but it's almost if you imagine like an undersea creature that's kind of like a jellyfish, but with like a slightly kind of pronounced head at the front, and their head in this case is almost smooth and has like kind of lights and circuits going within it that look almost a bit like eyes.
I think the look that stood out to me most was the head was very xenomorph shaped.
Yes, it's a little bit like actually. Do you remember what's it called? Live, Die, Repeat. Edge of Tomorrow. Those creatures in that.
Oh,
that's a bit like this kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
kind of the fast moving.
but it's kind of bigger and
slightly. Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of got like a smooth kind of xenomorph head and shoulders, but like a bigger featureless head. It hasn't got like a mouth. And then from what we can see, it's kind of propped up on like a massive writhing kind of wiry tentacles. Yeah. Anyway, Steve gets a little shot off at it, which it kind of distracts it, and then he runs off.
Yeah. And then he's in like a dark corridor and he kind of shoots and runs. But then David...
This is when there was 10 minutes left because I've written it down. Yeah.
Right. David corners Steve, but then the Trojan stabs through the back of Steve, and kind of lifts through the back of David. And lifts him up.
Yeah. And that's the only real like death we get on screen, really, isn't it? It's quite a cool one. It's not unsatisfying, but
it's kind of shot quite well where you kind of just see David looking over Steve, and then he just gets through the gut and lifted up.
And then Steve kind of runs off in slow motion.
We see 25 seconds left on the bomb, then it's 10.
All the
9,
gantry
8.
kind of stuff crashes down as this creature kind of comes down, and he's almost like starts after him. And as he just gets out, it like explodes. He kind of gets thrown out and blacks out.
And then we hear he's like he's laying down outside. We don't know what state he's in, but we hear
Yeah.
like encounter to mission. Encounter is the name of the ship.
That's it. Yeah,
encounter to mission, over and over.
Yeah.
And it's Richard. I've
Yes.
written down here. His name is Richard.
So you figured it out, yeah.
But
And Steve's alive.
Yeah, and he's like, the Trojan has been destroyed. Ryan didn't make it.
Yeah.
And
we find out his oxygen's leaking.
wait, what happened to Ryan?
He got blown up. Oh, he got shot by David and
yeah.
then got blown up after. His oxygen's leaking, but he's still got an hour left.
Yeah, shrapnel's pierced it. But yeah. And he's like, Richard, you can't land the encounter here. Yeah,
because Richard's like, I'll come get you. And he's like, no, the storm's really bad.
I'm going to go to the cave, land when the storm stops. Godspeed. Because they remembered they were in a sci-fi.
Yes. And also because he is a religious man, that
yeah,
Richard,
and he gets to the cave and he puts the piece back in to the sphere.
So was that stopping it from working?
I think because David shot it, it wasn't going to work until we put it back in.
Okay, yeah.
But he turns it back on.
Yeah, and then we get a flashback to present day.
Yeah,
and Amy's in the lab. She's kind of moping around, having a look at stuff on the desk.
Yeah, and it starts raining.
So, oh no, it's probably the sprinklers from before. Or was that a different place? That was a different place.
It might be the same place.
Might be the sprinklers. Anyway, and she sees the bracelet is glowing on the floor.
And it says P103.
Yeah, and then a load of other stuff. And she runs to the lab and she does her little maze game on her laptop, on her tablet. She completes the Westworld maze.
And lights flash.
Yeah, the anomaly kind of thing starts happening, and then
all the walls go red around her, like the effect we had with Steve in the lab.
That's it. Yeah, and she is now connected in a quantum entanglement fashion, as was explained earlier, to Steve, and he's like, "Hey, I'm back in time."
And he's like a hologram, I think it's the best.
Yeah, they try and touch each other.
They go to kiss and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
He says he's in the past and he knows how to save Earth.
Yeah, and he quickly, he's like, grab this, I'm going to tell you the formula, and then we don't hear it.
At first I thought P103 is not the answer to the vaccine. I don't get it. But then he can talk to her.
That's the connection thing. Yeah, it's like the coordinates or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and he gives her the formula. I presume a picture of it.
I think he's like, get a pen and paper and I'm gonna write. You can write this down. He's like, I'll only regret one thing. I'll never hold you again and our child.
Yeah. And he takes his mask off and he's like, I love you both. And they kind of do a hologram kiss where they, which, like, if they close their eyes, they're literally just like,
it's like,
they don't know if anything's
maybe
there.
you look so you can get a close up.
And then he kind of dramatically disappears.
Yes, which is just in time because we see him in a moment and he's kind of slumped on the floor.
Yeah. But we kind of get a flash forward now.
Yeah.
And Amy's plants are all better.
The plants are better. She's got the baby in the pram.
Yeah.
And then we also get a flash of Richard in the spaceship and he's just like saying some religious stuff.
Yeah, Bible verses.
And it suddenly just
roll
ends.
Credits.
Yeah. It was a weird one, wasn't it?
It was really weird because some bits I thought were great.
Yeah.
Visually, it looked good.
Yeah.
I think the design of everything was cool. I think the general story was pretty interesting. Maybe not entirely original take.
Not really at all, but yeah.
I thought it was interesting.
It was a nice kind of collage of different things. Like I was saying, the Interstellar thing, I didn't really make the connection about like reaching back into the past influencing stuff, which is very much that. And it's the flashbacks throughout and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, but then the dubbing really, really lets it down.
Yeah.
Maybe the acting as well. I'm not...
You're not convinced that the acting was the kind of...
it's really hard to tell because the dubbing.
I don't think Steve was a good lead. I think that's probably one of the factors.
It was a weird characterization where it's like, oh, he's a dick, but he's got the good intentions.
It felt very. I don't know. It was something. Maybe I just didn't like him. Maybe I didn't like his face, which is a horrible thing to say about something. It just felt like he was just like, and this is again part of the dub. It just felt very robotic, and it felt like he was going through the motions, and we were supposed to project things onto the character that weren't being really shown to us. That was almost like the opposite, where it was tell don't show. It was like, I am a scientist that doesn't care. Steve, you don't care about anyone. It was
I think what would have dramatically improved this film and that character was if they had that scene from Interstellar where Matthew McConaughey watches the video of his daughter and cries.
And it just
have that of like a video, because they can't do the time jumpy thing.
Yeah,
have a video that he's taken with him of maybe like their wedding video or him and his wife, where he gets really emotional about it.
But the whole point is that he just seems to not have any emotion, which is fine.
Yeah.
Like, that's a fine choice for a character,
but maybe not the lead.
Yeah, or just some active realization that's not just, okay, he's good in a crisis and he can plan things, and then he's just right. Like, and the final moment with him and Amy, it wasn't bad. Like, the music kind of swelled, and it was, I felt kind of like, oh, I can see where this is going and stuff. It just wasn't that good, really, in the end of the day. But overall,
I quite enjoyed it, I have to say. And even at the end, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this film.
No, I would agree.
And I was thinking about it today, and I was like, I still don't know. And even at this point, having spoke about it with you for an hour, I'm still not entirely sure what I feel about this film.
I think for me,
it's one of the more bizarre things we've watched.
Yeah, it's very middle of the road, and there's the good things are good, and for that I would say it's mostly the visuals and a couple of story elements. But I think for me, the other parts drag it down too much for me to even put it like relatively positive. And that's that's probably stronger than you feel about it.
I think early on I was like, if I'm gonna, because I was kind of intrigued by the plot. If I was like, if I'm gonna enjoy this, I'm gonna make the choice to overlook the dubbing and the acting and try and enjoy it anyway. And I think that's why I kind of enjoyed the rest of the film more than you did, perhaps.
Yeah, I think because there was quite a lot of the first kind of third to half where it was a lot of expositional stuff. I think being able, I found it quite difficult to overlook a lot of that stuff. Yeah. And it wasn't necessarily the dubbing. Some of that, I think, like, I was thinking back to like Shadow Chaser 3 has similarities in lots of ways, where it's like, it's a space film where like there's a ragtag crew. Well, they're not quite as ragtag. And the acting in that was quite bad generally. So and I didn't hate that film in any way, but I think this to me just felt so much. It didn't feel like it had that much character, and it felt quite bland to me at the end. And that's just the way I came out of it. But
fair
I think if I was going to rate it, I'd probably go, I'm definitely going to go lower than you imagine. I think I'm going to go with kind of a very milquetoast 5 there.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm kind of between two. But
we can be at odds here. Go on, go.
I'm going to give it a 7.
I thought you might. I think that is one of the most extreme differences we've had ever. I think your science project, I think I was like 2 higher than you, maybe more.
Yeah. Fair. I really hated that.
Yeah.
But
I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I think
I did really like that. I think the suit design was one of the things I liked the most, which isn't saying a lot. But that purple, that grey and orange with the beanies, I think I really like that. I think that's my favourite part of the whole film. I didn't like the alien design, to be honest.
I liked the alien design. Yeah. But yeah, I totally understand. I mean, it's got a 3.4 on IMDb, so yeah, I completely understand why people would just throw this aside.
I think if I found it more funny, I think maybe I would, like more like a Shadow Chaser or a Metal Beast. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? I think for me, it kind of was missing any kind of any positives. No, anything that made me kind of feel anything particularly strongly. So in that sense, I feel like for me a 6 would mean that I enjoyed it more than I really did. It's not true to my,
I'd like to. Well, I wonder if I'd still feel like this if, or how either of our opinions would change much if we watched it in Russian. And
I mean,
Russian.
it might be worth watching like a couple of key scenes. They might be on YouTube in the original language. There and see. The thing is, as well, I would have even preferred watching it with the original English, like not the ADR dubbing over, because sometimes it felt like they were being more expressive than the dubbing was.
And even if they've got strong Russian accents and broken
I mean,
English,
add the subtitles on if it's unclear. Like, I'd be quite keen. That's probably not a copy that we can get hold of.
No, and it might be things where like they emphasize the wrong words, gets not their first language and stuff like that. I think if I was, I never will, but if I was to rewatch this, I'd watch it subtitled in Russian.
Yeah, I think
so. You can kind of see what the vocal performances are actually like.
Yeah. There's a review on IMDb. Did you get any?
I haven't got any trivia.
Yeah, the heading of this review is Scunthorpe Amateur Dramatics Production of Alien.
I saw a couple of the good reviews on IMDb very much compared it to Prometheus, which we mentioned. It's got lots of Interstellar, Prometheus, Alien kind of mixed in together. Different story elements come from all three of them, but it was definitely an interesting one. I'm glad we watched it.
It was interesting, and it's nice to have new ones come out kind of under the radar. It's nice to be excited for them, but it's also kind of we spotted another one, didn't we? We won't spoil it on here, but
we'll probably do at some point.
Yeah,
soonish. Maybe in the new year.
Maybe in the new year. It depends how quickly we can get our hands on it. But yeah, no, I think it was good fun. It was good fun. If you like, we've covered a couple of kind of, I would say, kind of middle of the road. I wouldn't call them quite. They are B movies, but they're not like.
The film that is most similar to this that we watched, I find, was Project Ithaca.
That's exactly what I had in mind. Yeah, although I think Ithaca was stronger in certain aspects, but yeah. But this was better in like a budget visually wise, whereas Ithaca was very much in a room, kind of one room with flashbacks.
But it did have James Galander's.
Yeah, he's playing a senator in something that's coming out. I follow him.
Is he?
Well, I say we on the Instagram on the podcast Instagram. Yeah, he's been posting about something coming out soon. So
nice, good for him.
Check that out, everyone. But yeah, anything else you want to add about Gemini there?
No, it's I'm glad we watched it for good or bad.
Me too.
No, it was something different.
I don't feel it was a waste of time in any way. I know 5's kind of harsh, but yeah.
Fair enough. I guess that means it is now time for Personal Projects.
This looks kind of personal.
Projects.
So, Sam, I was going to ask you what you've been watching or reading, but I know what you've been watching.
Yeah, I've been watching Tales of the Jedi.
I thought you were going to say Andor.
Are we doing the other way around? I've been watching Andor.
What do you want to do first?
Let's do Andor first.
Okay. So, since we last spoke about it, they've done a heist. They kind of got the money. Andor went off to Miami and then got arrested.
Mon Mothma was getting stressed about money, and a whole prison thing happened. But yeah, so the heist. Oh God, I bit my cheek while I was saying that.
Heist.
The heist I thought was really good. I thought first half was tense and kind of slow, and then it all kicked off, and it was really good. And there was the space thing happening, the eye of the universe or whatever. And I've got loads of notes here that I made weeks ago that I don't understand. The kid died, and he had the manifesto, and it's like sowing the seeds for Andor to become a rebel and all that. It was all quite
they've
cool.
done a few bits of that, jump it forward. I think so. I was speaking to someone at work about it, and they're like, they don't really get why, like, you know, he's suddenly free and then suddenly got arrested. And I was like, no, I think that's great, because during the whole heist stuff, he was never, didn't really care about the rebellion. He wasn't a fan of the Empire, but didn't really care about the rebellion.
He was like, why does this affect me?
Yeah, and then he goes on holiday and just gets picked out of nowhere and gets sent to prison.
Yeah, he's just like hanging out with some woman. And
that is inspiration to join the rebellion there.
Absolutely. And I thought it was really good that, I can't remember the name of the like act or whatever. It was like the something acts that was like the new enforcement that was coming in. That was being like snuck in, and it felt very like dictatorial and all that kind of thing, and it was like authoritarian.
I find it funny when you have kind of this era of Star Wars, because they need to work around one of the opening scenes in A New Hope is them getting rid of the Senate.
Yes, yeah. But we get some good bits of the Senate where Mon Mothma, we've seen her before where she was there and it was kind of empty. We see one of the bits in this, I think, is when everyone's just stops listening to her because the news comes through about the attack and all that. And there's the part where everyone's like, it's almost like The Voice. They're like turning off their lights. Like, we reject your proposal. It's all...
I really like how she's playing it, where she's openly saying she's playing the ineffective, progressive, reformer. Yeah. And she plays that really well while secretly being like, I'm going to play you all up.
all the stuff with her, with the really sad, unhappy marriage that we found has been going for like 30 years, and they're just like, they were forced together as a political marriage, and it's just like,
when they were like young as well, we found
they were like 16, 13, something like that. They were very young. And and all the stuff with her that's progressed, where she's got like the old, like maybe boyfriend, maybe just friend. The husband's obviously very jealous.
That whole talk where she was like trying to imply without saying explicitly.
He says like, my politics might be a little bit too extreme for you, and then it ends where she's like, my politics might be a bit extreme for you.
Yeah. She's like, I play a character.
It's all good, but they are very like, every time they're having a conversation, it's like, I'm like, someone's gonna hear you. You're in a party. Yeah. I guess the whole thing is like, if the husband thinks it's an affair, that's fine, and that's probably maybe where they should lean into, which I guess is maybe what they're kind of vibing for, kind of
because
thing.
They even mentioned it was an old boyfriend. Her husband calls him. Oh no,
the daughter says it, and she's like, "Where did you hear that?" And it's like, "Oh, Dad told me." Like, the dad's just constantly undermining her because he's not as powerful politically, but he's more of a socialite, isn't he? From the scenes of things. I like how he's dressed as just like a weird like samurai. He's got like, he's always wearing like kimonos, and he's got like this man bun thing. And it's just
I feel like Coruscant fashion is always fucking wild.
Yeah. It's a really interesting look at the kind of I was gonna say politics or political side, but and I didn't think I'd be enjoying this side of it as much as
I am enjoying the Mon Mothma stuff, but during the prison episodes, I did just want to get back to the prison.
Yeah, no, I get that, because it hasn't progressed as much, because we get like the guy that's like her friend, ex-boyfriend, is like, I'm gonna put you in touch with this guy, and she's like, oh no, he's a real thug, and he is sleazy, but he's not exactly as like, kind of extreme as
he's less thinking. Like Jabba the Hutt sleazy and more like
money laundering and that.
He's like a mob boss.
I did like how he's like, it's like an indecent proposal. It's like, all kids are gonna get married if you as like a cover up of this, and she's like, no, and it's like, yeah, but you're thinking about it, aren't you? Kind of thing. It was good,
but every scene in the prison was fantastic.
Yeah, it's the best arc of this so far, and it's from going in where it's just like, it seems so like, they talk about how clean and like it's very white and empire, but it's just like, it's just the worst place.
Yeah, Andy Serkis is brilliant. From him being like I'm in charge.
Yeah, I mean,
you know why? Because he wants to get through his shifts and get to the end. He
has like 40 left or something, doesn't he, at one point? Or maybe that was the old guy.
Oh, that's the old guy. He's got like 200 left, so he's still not far.
Yeah, but like less than a year if that's days, effectively, 12-hour shifts. Yeah. But it was so interesting when they find out that the new reform has doubled everyone's sentences, and they're like, what's he heard about it? And they're all like, oh shit, he hasn't heard about this massive like legislation. And it's that thing you see like in like pre-Nazi or early Nazi Germany, where they kind of slipping certain reforms in and out. that are
Yeah.
slowly kind of basically amassing this like power.
Yeah.
I thought that was
I
really,
liked
really
all
good.
the hand signals because they don't interact with the other levels. Just
Yeah,
the
yeah,
night
just
shift.
across the thing. And yeah, and this like electrified floor that they explain, I didn't really understand it. They say like Tonksvid or something, or Tank.
Yeah, I
maybe
thought
it's
at first I
tungsten,
was like,
don't
it's
know.
really weird they're all barefooted, but that's
Yeah,
why.
yeah.
And I was like, that's quite
the
cool.
trainers are almost like the guards have are almost like Marty McFly, like future trainers. But it makes sense. It's this insulated kind of
Yeah,
thing.
but that bit where the old guy dies is sad,
Yeah,
and when the
yeah.
doctor tells them what's happened on level 2, and
Yeah.
Andy Serkis kind of has this realization
So good, such a good end to the episode where, and then he's like buys into the plan straight away. He's
because
like, because he
Andor had been trying to convince him already, and he was like, "No, if we do that, we're gonna get killed. I just want to leave."
Yeah,
and then he's like, "We're no," and when that bit where they all go back to their cells. And he's like, tell them,
And
tell
he
them what. And he's like, we're never leaving.
Yeah, it's so
like,
good.
yes.
This is what I was saying about the face acting earlier. That whole sequence where it goes from the end of the previous episode where the old guys died, and we kind of see that Andy Serkis is maybe being won over to the idea. From that next episode, the whole sequence of walking, and Andor's convincing him, he's like, we need this change of shift.
I like
so
as well
good.
during that conversation where it says program,
on program,
and Andy Serkis got his hands on his head, and Andor's kind of shouting at him, and he twists it around, and then by the end, Andor's standing at the front and hands and Andy Serkis is just screaming at the back, and it's like that.
It's like swapping it around. I thought it was really cool just to go back to when Andor first comes into the prison. He's being introduced to this, and he's just basically having a panic attack by the end of the first thing. And he's just like, oh my God, I've got to do this like manual labor thing like forever, mate. Because he's there for 6 years for literally being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And this idea of it. And it's just like, we also get a little bit of Stellan Skarsgård's character meeting Saw Gerrera at one point.
Yes, which was
an interesting little
great.
cameo.
It's funny because I watched that episode after watching Black Panther.
Yes, me too.
And it was like, I remember because when we watched Black Panther, Christina didn't realize it was Andy Serkis. I was like, it's Andy Serkis.
Okay.
And then like she went to bed, and then I turned on Andor and Andy Serkis. I was like, look, it's fucking Andy Serkis.
Interesting because,
and then Forrest Whitaker turns up as well, and I was like, holy shit, there's two people from Black Panther.
Andy Serkis is also Snoke as well, so I don't think there's any connection. No. I don't imagine how there can be. Although Andy Serkis' character is left kind of potentially, I think he probably jumped into the water.
It's quite emotional when he's just like, and it's also it brings so much to that character where he's not doing this for himself. Yeah, he's doing it for everyone else.
Totally. That whole last episode,
his 10, speech was great.
It's so good because he doesn't know what to say, and he's kind of put on the spot, but then he just goes straight into it. And all the plan with like, it's been brewing for a couple episodes.
The water
and everything.
And then that whole prison break it's a proper prison break.
It's really good.
And them all just launching tools and stuff at the guards while like
loads of them are getting shot.
And that one kid gets shot. Yeah, and he's the one who's making the plan.
Him. Yeah.
And they climb up and they get them kind of overrun them, and then they just run loose. And that bit where you get all the guards hiding in that one room.
Yeah, and they're just passing them by because the guards don't care. Like a lot of these people, it's just a job, isn't it?
It's just a job. They don't want to get killed.
Yeah.
And then that bit where it's kind of just a whole group running upstairs, and they get to the end. It's like, holy shit!
Like we got to jump. And
I did think like, how far have they got to swim? Because
I kept thinking they're going to land on top of each other. There's going to be some casualties.
Yeah.
But yeah, they escape and Andor is with one of the other guys
who's the guy who's in Rogue One.
Oh, is he one of the guys? Right, I never made the connection.
When he first, because
right,
there was in like the 90s and 2000s, there was a Sky TV series called Dream Team about a fictional football team.
Right.
And in the last 2 seasons before that's cancelled, this guy is like a Scottish footballer who turns up and he's like captain of the team.
Right.
So when Rogue One came out, I was like, holy shit, it's that guy from Dream Team, like 10 years later. So he kind of stood out to me in Rogue One. So then when they got to the prison, straight away I was like, holy shit, it's that guy. He's in Rogue One. So I was like, he's going to stick with Andor. And I was like, that's quite nice. And you see.
Yeah, I'm having a look at Rogue One cast, and with pictures, I can't
his character
him out.
name begins with M. It's like Milash or something.
Right, he might not be on the main cast up here. That's probably what's happened.
Yeah, I can
yeah,
have a look at the Andor cast. He's
yeah,
probably bigger
yeah.
on that. But yeah, I imagine from here on out it'll be like the
Melshi?
Melshi, that's him.
Rue Scott Melshi.
Yeah, Melshi, because he calls him Melshi the whole time.
Okay, yeah, he's got a shaved head in Andor.
Duncan
yeah.
Powell is the actor, yeah.
Okay.
But
yeah,
yeah.
Andor. Oh yeah, no, I can see him there. Yeah, the minor. Yeah, smart attitude. Okay, cool. Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, that's a cool kind of link between this and
Sergeant
Rogue
Melshi.
One.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, but yeah, that was all like very standout stuff there. We got little bits in between. Oh yeah, so the Saw Gerrera thing. The interesting thing about that is Saw is talking about how the rebellion is so splintered, and I'm thinking it's almost like they need a rebel alliance in some way, isn't it? At this point,
yeah. Saw Gerrera, because we even see it in Rogue One where he's kind of got his own.
He's seen as very
separate.
Extreme. He's very like they're like terrorists more than anyone else at this point.
Yeah, they're the extreme wing.
Really extreme.
They're doing their own thing.
And you know, you've seen more Rebels than me. He's in bits and pieces.
He's in a couple of episodes that obviously he's much younger and he's from a planet that are rebellion against the separatists, and the Jedi go in and kind of work with them. He's got a few scenes with Ahsoka, and very much in that he's of the opinion that they aren't going far enough. They need to fight more. So it's kind of sowing the seeds. Yeah. And then I think that would have been before Rogue One. They then took that character.
So that's Clone Wars then.
Yeah.
But then he is in Rebels at some point, isn't he?
He's in Rebels as well.
Yeah.
So he's a popular character. So yeah, he came in Clone Wars before Rogue One.
Right. So
but he kind of is an expansion of that character to what he became. Okay, cool.
Because is he from the place with the bugs that's in Clone Wars?
No.
Geonosis. No.
He's not
but he might be an episode that goes to Geonosis. I've watched some Clone Wars.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. But the other kind of storyline that's going on as well is Cyril living with his awful mum and the ISB rising in the ranks person, the woman who's like trying to track down Andor. That's all going on as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which I think is quite interesting. Like, it's not my favorite part of any of this, but I think it's really interesting how Cyril keeps like bugging her, and he's kind of like he's got this weird like admiration / like obsession with her, which kind of verges on like a bit of like
just that in public,
and he almost like she's like, "Are you stalking me?" And it's like he's almost like in love with her, but like in the idea of what she does and everything, and it's very it's strange. I guess that's
from Onderon.
Oh, okay.
No, just for record.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all quite interesting. And then the last part of the episode 10, we get the other ISB like leader that is being blackmailed by Stellan Skarsgård's character.
Yeah.
And I thought it was all audio, but it turns out they have met face to face, but not for like a year. And he's basically
trying to back out. But...
And there's an interesting thing there where the ISB guy is like, we're gonna ambush this load of rebels, Krieger's lot or something. And he's like, yeah, if I tell them, they'll know that there's something going on. So he's willing to sacrifice like 50 men, he says, just for the sake of keeping this like leak hidden.
It's like the whole thing. It like in World War II when we broke the Enigma code, they couldn't follow through with all of it and give it away.
Yeah, because at one point I was like, is this guy a rebel as well? Because that would have been kind of interesting. And the way that Stellan Skarsgård talks to him, he's like, you are a rebel, but not of choice kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there is a good little speech there, but I think because we'd had Andy Serkis' speech like 10 minutes before, that ending was kind of overshadowed a little bit for me.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, my main question is, where's Andy? What's going on with him? Is he gonna become Snoke? What's going on there?
That would be a funny.
He's the only man left because he didn't swim.
We found out that Snoke's a clone of Palpatine.
Yeah, and they got the DNA from this guy in a prison.
Yeah,
he was good at making speeches, so they took his voice.
No, I do hope he's.
I think,
although at the end we saw just Melshi and Andor running away.
I think the fact they didn't kill him off means that he'll either turn up in the end of this, or more likely he'll pop up in a future season 2 episode.
It would be good because Andy Serkis is great.
I think they would have like killed him off, had him drown or whatever, or had even a shot of like him still up there when everyone else isn't there. It felt quite like unresolved to me.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
but yeah, I think it's really picked up and it has been really good. We've only got 2 episodes left, so I imagine it will be Andor and Melchi joining the rebels.
We've got quite a lot of unfinished stuff back on Ferrix or whatever it's called, the original planet. So the mum is like getting worse and worse. The adopted mum,
the
Fiona,
girlfriend is currently being arrested.
Well, she had that whole like audio sonic torture thing, which was quite cool. It was quite interesting. I think she's really good. I've seen her in a couple of things before. I can't remember the name. Is something Adaj or something like that. But she's good. I think they've got some unfinished stuff with her. And there's a couple of characters. There's the guy that Andor used to work with that pops up every now and then. Who covered for him in the first episode
and helped her when they couldn't.
Yeah. So I think he's probably going to end up maybe in season 2, but I feel like it would be a bit of a wait. Maybe he'll pop back there for the final episode. Maybe have a showdown with Cyril in some way. Maybe Cyril will end up going there. I don't really know, but I mean, I'm really interested.
I imagine it will end with some loose ends ready for season 2.
Yeah. To be fair, I mean, the thing is, I kind of hope Cyril isn't re-recruited for any Imperial stuff, because it would be such a bad move on anyone's part, because he's got such like a grudge. He's got such a vendetta.
And he's so blindsided by his hatred.
And he's right in what he said to whatever the lady's name is. Like, he did solve a double murder really quickly. And he was on the right track. But he's just too chaotic. And in the field, he just froze up and he was just shit, basically. But yeah, there's something going on there. It's just, there's certain little threads I think are slightly more dragged out than they could be, but the main plot is really, really
all
top,
the Andor stuff,
top grades. Yeah.
But
so
that's Andor.
We've got some other Star
Tales
Wars
of the Jedi. So I realised when I spoke about it the other week, when I went back to watch the rest, apparently I'd watched episodes 2 and 3. I didn't watch episode 1. Which is weird. So when I spoke about it, the Dooku stuff.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, the first episode to me looked like it was all Ahsoka stuff, so that's why I didn't watch it. And you were like, yeah, it's kind of in this village and you don't really know what's going on. And when I watched it, I was like, okay, well, Lewis didn't pay attention for the first 15 minutes. So we get a lot of like, it's Ahsoka's
I started with episode 2.
It's Ahsoka's like full kind of origin, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's her being born, and then there's some cool animals there.
Yeah, the mum is going like hunting, and Ahsoka kind of like does a bit of like force stuff with the tiger lion.
Yeah. It's quite interesting because like you hear that the Jedi take children when they're young to train them.
Yeah.
But you never actually see it. And they immediately are like, she's a Jedi. They kind of know that she's going to be taken away from them.
I can't remember do we see who turns up for her? Is that
it doesn't happen?
No, it doesn't happen.
In Clone Wars, she mentions that it was Plo Koon,
right? Okay,
who gets the
one with the funny gas mask face.
Who gets blown up in Order 66.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And then the second episode is where like the senator's son has been kidnapped.
That's the episode I talked about.
And that was cool. Like it was very like, it's almost like a maybe Victorian or like early 10s 20s like fishing village, like a kind of,
it felt like one of those classic samurai village stories,
or like a western.
Star Wars does loads of times. The Mandalorian did it. That what was the other series they did?
Visions. Yeah, the first episode
Visions that did that as well.
And the final episode of this is a bit like that as well with Ahsoka. But it was really cool, and it sows the seeds. I think overall I really enjoyed these 2 episodes, 2 and 3.
Yeah, which kind of lead off from
which are
each
the
other.
Dooku, the mainly Dooku focused
Dooku
stuff.
episode. The
I
second
think
one's got Windu on the planet as well, which is quite cool.
That's the third one then.
The third one, yeah.
Third one. And there's the third one, the one that kind of bookends Phantom Menace, because there's a bit of the... or is that the fourth?
That's the fourth one.
That was my favourite one, I think.
Yeah, because that happens at the same time as the Phantom Menace. Because you have Dooku deleting the Camino records.
Yes, and we see there's something going on with him, and he has the conversation with Mace Windu, and he's like, there's... Qui-Gon comes to him at the start, and it's like, something's going on here. We've had this encounter, and they're all just like, "Hey, it's nothing. Don't worry about it."
I was like, "No, that's fucking
And then
funny."
we skip like a couple of days, however long it is.
Qui-Gon's dead.
Qui-Gon's dead,
and I was like, "That's cool," because
that was really. It was literally filling in the gaps, and that's what this series is perfect for.
The Clone Wars season 7 that came out like last year. The last 3 episodes of that happened at the same time as Revenge of the Sith.
Yes,
and it's done in a really cool way.
Right, so
it's more intertwined than this is, but it's kind of the cool seeing what else is happening during the films.
That's what I really enjoyed,
and having Yaddle in there as well.
Yeah. Although, I mean, it makes sense. We now know what happened to Yaddle, but I did. Yeah, I mean, I didn't necessarily love that Empire. It was quite cool still. I didn't hate.
I liked seeing the Dooku Palpatine stuff because
he still kind of seems a bit unsure at that point. It's literally. I mean, that's often the way with these things. It's when they're literally told to kill someone that they like that they turn, kind of thing. And it was nice to see that moment there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was my. Well, I say that was my favorite. There's a couple episodes after that.
I think one bit on that episode as well. The fact that Dooku's like, Qui-Gon didn't have to die. He could have worked with us. Shows that Dooku was never fully invested in the whole Sith stuff.
No.
But he just disagreed with the Jedi.
Yeah, and we actually, the episode before that, to go back and forth. When there
sows the seeds.
And he's unhappy with... because there was like the assassination that was like set up and all that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, what happened here? And then he figures it out. And then the guy in prison is like, things aren't going well. And he's like, I know, like, trust me, I know more than anyone. I've kind of already changed sides, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah. And then episode 5 is...
I didn't like this one at all.
This was basically set in the early seasons of the Clone Wars. It's just an additional episode.
Yeah, for me, it didn't do anything because I haven't watched any. I've seen bits of Ahsoka early days, but
I think one thing that this is, which is the reason probably you didn't enjoy it so much, is it leads into season 7 so much because.
Isn't it something like the method of what's happening ties into how
there's
someone
a defining
dies
bit in Order 66 where Ahsoka defends herself against a bunch of clones.
So this is setting up that, basically.
This is, setting up that, and it's kind of...
See, this is when we talked about Tales of the Jedi, I was like, I'm sure there'll be some bits that don't really work for me because I don't know.
Yeah,
and this was the only one, I would say.
I agree it wasn't the strongest episode, but that's kind of the point of that episode.
Yeah, I'm going like, okay.
And you see it at the end... That final scene is in
so is that
7.
What that is? I was thinking like, oh, so it's literally that many people. Okay. Because I was like, what is going on there? And I kind of realized that she was maybe a bit older, but I kind of didn't really.
Yeah, it's that was very much based in.
And the guy who's
seen season 7,
and
right?
the guy who's taking her in, is that one of the same guys from the training, so he knows what's going on?
No.
Okay.
That's Captain Rex.
But isn't Captain Rex the same one without the helmet earlier as well?
Maybe. Actually,
so maybe that's what I'm thinking. Maybe it's a bit of
there's a lot more going on in that season 7.
I know. That's what I was a little bit worried about with this. I know that the reactions to season 7 were really good, and I didn't want to spoil anything for myself. And I knew there was some big Ahsoka escaping 66 stuff. So I guess it's been slightly spoiled, but not really.
And you still don't really know how it goes. It's still very good and worth watching.
Cool. And then the final episode is back to the kind of this Ronin samurai kind of vibe.
Yeah,
which I really liked this episode. I thought it was good.
Interestingly, I didn't realize until I just read this.
Yeah.
This episode was loosely adapts the events of the 2016 novel Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. And I was like, huh. And I was like, wait a minute, I've read that book. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, I remember that happening in the book.
So it's just like a whole long version of that where she lives on a farm.
That is kind of it's in the first maybe act, maybe the first half of the first act.
Because
this
it
happens.
Ends, well, we'll talk through it, but yeah, she's working on the farm. She reveals herself, as Jedis always seem to do every time, because they can't help themselves. Fair enough. They've taken an oath. They love people, whatever. Stupid bitch boy is like, I'm going to tell everyone.
Yeah.
This cool Inquisitor with like a bird skull mask turns up.
Yeah.
Very cool.
He's
I like
cool.
that. Ahsoka steals the lightsaber, easily dispatches. But this Inquisitor knows who she is.
Yeah.
Because Inquisitors are recruited
and from the Jedi. And
Jedi.
Ahsoka being Anakin Skywalker's Padawan is pretty well known anyway.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you've watched all the extra bits
in universe.
Yes.
But yeah, in the book, this is kind of one of the moments that leads her to actually get back involved and join the rebellion. And that's what we see at the end,
because we have Organa, Bail Organa.
Bail Organa,
hey,
yeah.
I did like the bit where they have the little secret conversation where he's like, hey, stormtroopers, well, clone troopers, if you ever need me, come find me. And it's like she's hiding in her cloak, like, okay, Bail, I agree, yes. Yeah. I quite like that. It's very like, but yeah,
Bail Organa's always, whenever Bail Organa turns up in anything, I'm like, I like this man.
So I've watched Rebels and she comes through a portal. Okay, there's a time tree. Where do we know what happens with her story? Or like canonically, from this point of her being like, okay, I have to help. Is there stuff on screen from then?
No. So this on screen, this happens, and the next chronologically we see her is when she turns up in Rebels as a rebel.
Right. I can't remember what happens. So what happens with the time thing? It's not important.
That happens in like a later season of Rebels.
So she's already in it, and then
she's already in it working with them.
And then she goes through the time portal and goes forward in time, does she?
No,
I can't remember.
I don't think she. I think she goes back to her own time in that.
I can't remember what happened.
I think she goes back.
Because I watched that episode, because that's the whole like Maul's pretending to be good and he tricks Ezra, and then Darth Vader turns up, and it's one of the first times there's been like a big conflict. Yeah, and I watched like 4 more episodes after that, and I was like, that was all good, but for some reason I'm not going to watch anymore. And that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah,
now.
So yeah, she becomes a rebel. Then she's already involved in the movement by the time of Rebels. Yeah. She's in and out throughout Rebels.
Right.
And then after that, next time we see her is Mandalorian.
I thought she got pulled through time to that point in Rebels.
I'm gonna have to rewatch it. Yeah. I might be wrong, but
I thought she got pulled through, but I don't know where she would have been pulled from.
Yeah, I know they have a whole thing with Palpatine.
Yeah,
but I think they close it and just go back. I don't think they actually time travel.
I think someone does.
I think the opportunity is there. It kind of introduces the idea, but they end up back where they started. Is where my gut tells me. Like I said, I may be wrong, but that is kind of
Ahsoka time traveled 2 years into the future, then returned to her original timeline in possession of information from future events.
There we go.
So she popped somewhere in one scene, found something. Who knows? Anyway,
yeah,
we'll revisit that probably when we talk about the Ahsoka series in about a year's time. I remember being confused, but entertained by the scene, and I don't really know.
That Inquisitor with the mask is part of the Project alumni.
Oh.
It's a voice actor. Guess who?
Is it Clancy Brown?
It's Clancy Brown.
Hey! Okay, so no, it doesn't count. Does it?
It doesn't count. But it's nice to see him anyway. And Yaddle was voiced by Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yes, Ron Howard's daughter.
Yeah,
we mentioned Ron Howard earlier.
Who has obviously directed lots of Mandalorian episodes and stuff.
And was in all the Jurassic World films that we covered on Silver
Liam
Screen.
Neeson did come back as Qui-Gon. I thought his voice was...
His son played the young version in that the second episode.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, which seems kind of pointless, but okay.
Yeah.
He barely has any lines in that.
But in that episode where... the Phantom Menace episode, I was like, that's Liam Neeson, isn't it? I looked up, I was like, yep, that is Liam Neeson.
Yeah, I thought it was. Yeah. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think they've got. I think this is a good. It's kind of like What If, but not What If.
It's just
It's almost like when did kind of thing.
yeah,
Do you know
it's
what I mean?
kind of like there's lots of stuff that isn't worthy its own full series. We're just gonna make little episodes that like Dooku's downfall, Ahsoka becoming force sensitive.
Yeah. I bet there's. I mean, I imagine because of where they've jumped around, there's probably lots of Rebels era stuff that they can probably touch on.
Yeah.
You'd know more than me what bits can be filled in. And what would be really interesting is moving into Mandalorian sequel era stuff. Maybe, I mean, it depends on what the Ahsoka series will cover.
I mean,
but
the biggest gaps in the timeline at the moment are between Revenge of the Sith and Rebels.
Yeah, although
there's not much time.
No, I mean we've had in the last 5 years we've had quite a bit. I mean, we've had Obi-Wan, we've had Rogue One, we've had Andor.
But I think they're all essentially at the same time as Rebels, like that 5 years before.
Yeah,
the Battle of Yavin.
But doesn't Rebels go both sides of that?
What do you mean, both sides?
So both sides of the Battle of Yavin, or is it all pre?
I think it's all pre.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, there's kind of a bit of a gap, not long, just a few years between Revenge of the Sith and Rebels. But the biggest gap is between Mandalorian and The Force Awakens.
Yeah, that's like, because they've got that's their little like bit to save for another time.
Yeah, that's a good like 20 years that we don't know anything.
Yeah, because what is it? I think it's like Mandalorian was like 5 years after Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, something like that.
And then because Luke's not much older when he makes his appearance in season 2. Yeah.
So we know from the stuff we saw in the sequels that Luke set up the temple. Ben Kenobi left, Ben Solo rather. Left.
And that's I mean,
but that's all we really know.
Is it 30 years?
Something like that.
Something like that. It's about the same time.
I think it's more time between the original trilogy and the sequels and the prequels and the original. Because Phantom Menace is 19 years before the Battle of Yavin.
How can that be? That can't be right.
That is right.
Because Phantom Menace jumps like 10 years between.
Yeah.
But then Luke isn't born. Revenge of the Sith
Luke is born in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. Do you see what I mean? Revenge of the Sith. So whenever the end of Revenge of the Sith is 19 years or so, because Luke's like 19.
Yeah.
So Revenge of the Sith to Battle of Yavin must be 19 years.
So the Phantom Menace is 32 years before the Battle of Yavin. Revenge of the Sith is 19 years.
19 years.
I got it mixed up. And then
because Luke is 19, isn't he? Yeah.
Attack of Clones is 22. Clone Wars 22 to 19. Bad Batch is 19 to 18. And then we've got a jump to Solo, which is 13 to 10.
Battle of Yavin, before Battle of Yavin.
Before Battle of Yavin. So that's like 8 years between Bad Batch and Solo.
Cool. Yeah.
And then Obi-Wan, Andor, Rebels, Rogue One. Whereas after Boba Fett is set in 9 after. So Return of the Jedi is 4 years after the Battle of Yavin. So Boba Fett is 5 years after that.
Right, yeah.
And
so that's about the same as Mandalorian, isn't
and then
it?
The Force Awakens is 34, so that's 30 years after Return of the Jedi.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a basically 25-year gap between Mandalorian and Force Awakens.
I mean, there's been the next thing that we've got, which kind of caps the episode off, because it's kind of where we started. I think the next series that I know of, although there was a Baby Yoda Studio Ghibli thing that went on. Did you see that?
No, I heard. Is it okay?
I haven't watched it yet. It's a short. It's like, I think it's like 5-10 minutes.
I saw a trailer for Studio Ghibli, Lucasfilm, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's just a short, but maybe they'll do a bit more. But the next thing that I'm aware of is the Jude Law led series, which I can't remember what it's called. And that's the one that they were going to cast Millie Bobby Brown for, that was like Stranger Things led kind of thing. I think that is hopefully going to be in this gap somewhere. I don't think they'll venture too far into the gap because they want to keep it for the next 20 years of Star Wars.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. If you got,
So I'm just looking up every upcoming Star Wars movie and TV show.
it's called Skeleton Crew.
Tales. Yeah. So, there's Bad Batch season 2.
I didn't watch any
January.
Bad Batch.
It
no.
was,
but that's all
fine.
pre Battle of Yavin as well, isn't it?
Mandalorian season 3 next year. Young Jedi animated TV series next year. Probably be a kids show.
Yeah.
Star Wars Visions season 2.
Oh yeah,
next year.
But Visions is basically What If, isn't it? That is actually.
We've got an Ahsoka TV series next year, which will be
so that'll be further
same
on.
timeline as Mandalorian, roughly. A Skeleton Crew,
that's
as you
the one
said,
I'm
which is the
thinking
Jude
of,
Law one, which takes place in the post Return of the Jedi reconstruction that follows the fall of the Empire at the same time as the Mandalorian.
Yeah. Okay, so they're really parking in this kind of 5 to 10 year period, aren't they? At this point,
and then it's the Acolyte.
They probably know vaguely what they want to do, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of the sequel characters come back at some point. So
and
I think they'll probably go like elsewhere, like Acolyte, maybe even far-flung future, maybe even concurrent different galaxy for things like Rian Johnson's. I think they'll save a lot of that 25-year period for when they need kind of a period to work on.
Yeah, and I imagine similar with when the prequels came out, people hated them.
Yeah.
They gave it a few years, did the Clone Wars, which people like, and then people have kind of looked back on the prequels with a bit of rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're like, we'll put more out from that era. Yeah. I think they're waiting for the sequels to get past that original hatred that a lot of people have.
Absolutely.
And once people have cooled down a bit,
and
let's revisit.
That central cast for the prequels is really, really strong. I don't agree with everything they did. Not in the same way that people are vocal about online. I think they're a great cast. I think the story overall is fine. But I think there's real possibilities for. I mean, pretty much no one died in that core cast, so they could all. Yeah. It'd be great to see like Finn maybe explore some of the Jedi stuff because it was hinted at. Even just be like, just for him to do something would be nice. And to see. I was going to call her Daisy. Ray do Daisy Jedi stuff, but do this kind of neutral Jedi, grey Jedi.
Yeah, I mean the only thing that's come out of that era non-films is Resistance, the TV series, which was okay.
I didn't like the look of it, so I didn't watch it.
Yeah, it wasn't as good as Rebels or Clone Wars, but it was fine.
Yeah, and I think there was the Star Wars like Halloween's Lego special, which I think was using those characters, but they travel back in time.
There's a shit ton of Lego stuff.
They travel back in time and they were like, hello, Darth Vader. And they got chased around or something.
It's all non-canon. So.
Anyway, that was the biggest Star Wars episode you'll ever get from the Project.
Well, just imagine if they did a Star Wars project. That'd be fantastic.
There is something there, but it's a bit more of a broad thing. But we'll talk about that off pods. There's a little teaser there.
Yeah.
You actually hinted at it earlier. If you know your Star Wars stuff,
off podcast plan in there.
Bingo.
But anyway, that brings us to the end of the show.
Yeah.
Hopefully you enjoyed this. I know I did. And you can show how much you enjoyed it by giving us 5 stars on your podcast listening application.
Yeah.
Nobody calls it an application, but it feels weird saying podcast app. Don't know why, but give us 5 stars on it anyway. Yeah. Or you can get in contact with us directly. I don't think you'll get anyone from the film for this one because they're all Russian.
Maybe they might have moved away from the country since it was films.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean you can send us messages on most social medias, but you can also send us an email at the projectpod@gmail.com. All our social medias are in the link tree in the episode description. If you want to comment on YouTube videos, all of our episodes should be up. If this one is not up, then I apologize. It will be up at some point. But yeah, just if you've got any suggestions for anything project related, just point us in the right direction. Or if you've got any comments about our Star Wars chat, if we're incredibly wrong about the timeline, please correct Lewis. If you know about secret Star Wars projects,
if you just want to mess us because you hate The Last Jedi, don't bother. I've read enough of those comments before.
No, I'm not interested. If you got any kind of leaks though, you can tell us. We won't spoil who you are, if that's the word.
Yeah.
We won't like whistle blow you. You can whistle blow against.
Email us, Mark Hamill.
Yeah, go on, Mark.
Isn't he been cast in something?
He was cast in Star Wars, I think.
No, there's something new coming out with Mark Hamill.
Oh, you know what? Kevin Conroy died, didn't he? That was really sad.
That
reminded me. No, I don't know. I was thinking about watching some Batman the Animated Series. I think I'll do so in tribute to Kevin Conroy. Mark Hamill. It's just stuff about
Kevin Conroy.
Mark Hamill has sent 500 drones to Ukraine. I'm hoping that those are good drones. Okay, I think that's probably time to finish the episode. So thanks for bearing with us for a mega star related episode.
Yeah.
Wars and otherwise. And we'll see you next time, you goons.
I'll hear you next week, and I'm the god of the new earth.
All you care about is your project, you little bitch. Bye.
Bye.
All you care about is you and your project?